Good afternoon. It is exactly 5:11 on May 1st, 2024, and this is the District of Columbia Board of Education working session is now called to order. This month's working session is being held in person at the Marion S. Berry Junior Building, 441, so most of us. However, in-person attendance is limited to state board members, staff, and guests. The working session is also being streamed live on the State Board's YouTube page for members of the public to attend. Please visit SBOE.dc.gov to learn how to submit and/or present testimony at an upcoming State Board public meeting. The roll will now be called to determine the presence of a quorum. Executive Director Butler, please call the roll.
Representative Kelly. Representative Villaflor.
President.
Representative Washington.
President.
Representative Yarkin. Representative Beck. Representative Chang.
President.
Representative Goulet. Representative Henderson.
Here.
Representative O'Leary.
Here.
Representative Reed. Representative Williams.
Present.
Representative Patterson.
Present.
Representative Thompson. Mr. Vice President, you have a floor.
Thank you, Director Butler. A quorum has been determined and the State Board will now proceed with the meeting. Again, welcome to our May working session. At this time, I will share our leadership reports. There for everyone. With our president not present, I won't present one leadership report at this particular time, but we will proceed with the meeting, okay? And we'll go straight to the executive director report. Lisa, give this over to our executive director, Dr. Butler.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the DC State Board of Education. Over the last month, the State Board team has been busy. We have completed the search for our new public information officer, Andrew Root, who will start with SBOE in early June. We have also completed the onboarding of our latest team members. Please welcome Ian Fernando, our new procurement analyst, and Cheyenne Hunter, our new admin and operations fellow to the team. Looking ahead, the State Board team is set to collaborate with DGS to finalize the site planning for our office renovation project, including the FY25 to FY30 capital budget. We are also working in tandem with the Ombudsman's office and the Chief Student Advocate's office to organize our first full agency retreat in late June. This retreat will serve as a strategic planning session for the next 9 months, including the onboarding of 20 newly elected board members from the November election. These collaborative efforts underscore our commitment to effective planning and teamwork. Furthermore, the State Board team will kick off a social and visual media campaign beginning in August and running through the end of September for back to school to help the community learn about and stay up to date on the State Board, how to contact us, and all the services offered in our sister offices. Over the next few days, we will receive a copy of talking points regarding the human resource activity for the State Board for you to share with all of your allies on the council. While we understand that it is a tight budget season, the cost of not having a dedicated FT for human resources is putting our agency at risk for lawsuits pertaining to employment due process concerns. As State Board grows and evolves with the addition of our Sped Hub staff as full-time employees included in the mayor's budget, and in-house HR specialist is even more essential to our efficiency, our operational efficiency. Last but not least, next on May 13th, the May Advisory Student Advisory Committee will recognize all of our graduating seniors from the Student Advisory Committee at promptly 5 p.m. to 5:30, so that they can get on with the rest of their meeting. And we ask that all members, if you will come out, if you can, to join us to celebrate them. And so we can congratulate them on all of their endeavors going forward as they prepare to graduate in May and June of this year. Vice President Patterson, that's my report.
Thank you so much, Executive Director Butler. Are there any questions from our members at all about the report? At all? Did we receive some news that that for the HR position?
They've asked us for numbers,
Okay.
but there's no markups, no changes yet. They just asked them whatever it costs.
So we'll continue to advocate for that we do understand limitations, not those leadership or anything like that, but some of the issues that you raised, like, so make sure that we do all the components for the HR position. With that being said, I will now turn over the next 45 minutes to my favorite people from Aussie and Dugal and Ross, who will share updates on the social emotional learning standards. It is all good.
Thank you so much. Always good to be here. I don't know if we'll need full 45 minutes, but we'll see. And welcome to Ian and all your new folks. So it's great to build capacity. We are back to talk about social emotional learning standards. As you know, we've touched base with you a few different times on this. We have two primary objectives in speaking with you tonight. We want to explain the updates that we have made to the SEL standards in response to SBOE feedback. The second iteration, building good products is often an iterative process, and we appreciate the additional feedback that we have received, and we'll explain the adjustments we've made. And then our second objective is to answer any remaining questions that you all have about SEL standards. Our agenda, what we'll go through today is just a reminder about what the standards development process has been like, how we've gotten to today, walking through what those changes are, and then identifying next steps and finally taking questions with that. And I know Marcus was would love to have been here today. He's feeling under the weather. He's here with us when we were previously talking about SEL standards, and he's pretty hard on this, but I will turn it over to Elizabeth.
Thank you so much, Andrew, and thank you again for inviting us back to talk about this important topic. Marcus is actually here with us on the Zoom. Hi, Marcus. Thanks for chiming in. And I have him on the chat to keep me honest as I talk through this work here tonight. We are particularly excited to be here because when we came to the public meeting last month, we understood that there were a few state board members who were not yet ready to vote on the standards. So I just want to double down on the final point that Andrew made in regard to the second objective, rather than Andrew made in regard to why we are here tonight. I am very interested in making sure that if there are any lingering questions, any lingering areas of concern, that we are able to talk about them here tonight or in the coming days in relatively short order, so that by our May public meeting, we are ready for a vote on this important document. And that timeline is particularly important to us and our OSCE team, because as we've discussed previously, much of the resources that we're leveraging for implementation of these standards are federal stimulus recovery funds, which means that they will expire at the end of September. And so the more time and energy that we spend, or the more resources we spend on the standards development, means the shorter both timeline and fewer resources that we will have to support high quality standards implementation. Additionally, we are rapidly preparing for our SEL meeting on June 12th, and would really like to head into that meeting with a final set of standards. So just want to ground us in that timeline. And the slide that Bernie has pulled out does a great job of highlighting for us where we have been. It is no surprise to this group that this work is deliberative, that we have been at it for some time. Starting nearly 2 years ago in 2022, and now we are excited to present to you what we are looking for our final set of SEL standards for consideration. And next slide, please. As this body knows, the process has been deliberative. We have engaged in robust rounds of public feedback and truly benefited from feedback from this body. We're grateful that this body spent time during our public meeting earlier this year and has spent the last 3 scoping sessions engaged in this. After every round of review, public review, stakeholder engagement, listening sessions, hearing the public panel at the public state board meeting, and multiple rounds of feedback from this body, including the one most recently on April 25th. OSCE has taken that feedback, given it due consideration, and made some substantive changes. At each turn, we are also making decisions. When there's conflicting feedback, where there are multiple pieces of feedback that would cause internal inconsistencies or incoherence within the document, we have to make decisions about what to prioritize. And at every single term, we prioritize educator voice. The educators that we convened to serve on the working committee are the voices that we prioritize because we know that as strong as this final document of standards is, it is not going to make a difference unless it's implemented with fidelity. And it is that educator voice, that educator input that is going to help these standards be implemented with fidelity. Next slide, please. This group knows, but I did want to spend some time here because it was one of the questions that came up in that April 25th letter. The structure of this standards is of the standards document is unique as compared to some of the other standards work that we have done and have done with this body. We leveraged the framework from the National Collaborative Castle in order to develop and align on 5 competencies in these standards. Competencies is a Castle term. Those competencies are self-awareness, self-management, social and cultural awareness, relationship skills, decision-making, and agency. We specifically did that because those are the standards that are underway in many, but not all, of our DC public schools right now, both DC traditional public schools and the DC charter schools. And we want to leverage and build on the good work that is already underway. CASEL also uses the term standards to further describe each of these competencies. And with that, provide clear, consistent social emotional learning goals for each of these standards. The OSSE team, and including the educators that served on the writing group, further determined that to help these standards live in DC classrooms, we needed a deeper level of detail. And this is the work that is already happening in many of our DC LPs. That's where the indicators come in. So the indicators further describe what students are expected to know and be able to do under the standards within the range of their competencies. And then in social emotional learning is the job of a lifetime. This work is split across standards. So we know that students are able to practice similar skills in different ways with different levels of sophistication as they advance along their educational trajectory. Next slide, please. As we've also discussed, OSSE cannot do this work alone. It's a team and collaborative work. We're doing it in conjunction with national and local experts, both those educators who are serving in our schools and those who are serving nationally. And I was on the phone with our national experts earlier this week, who were sharing with me how excited they were that DC is at this point. They were elevating their work as truly groundbreaking in this political moment, where many states are walking away from this, and they are so pleased and so proud, as am I, and as I know many of you are, that DC is remaining committed to social emotional learning at a time when many states are undercutting their work in this space and not providing students with a framework to help guide this importance and skills. Next slide, please. As we've discussed previously, the group of experts that we've worked with here in DC has been voluminous, and it is for the very reason that I've already articulated. We need to be sure that our standards are informed by the great work that is happening across our city and that they make sense given our local context and local needs. Next slide, please. Now I'll talk a bit about the responses that we made in regards to the college. As this group knows, we made significant changes in the version of the standard in April 2024. Those changes made the standards stronger and better. We added an introduction. That introduction provided additional clarifying language and helped to make sure that anyone picking up this document was well aware of its purpose and how it could be used. We also clarified the context of key terms within the context of the FBI standard, and I'm really grateful to Representative Lee for her push on that in particular. It was really helpful. We introduced a document organization system, and I'm thankful to this body for suggesting the document organization system that we ultimately adopted. These standards are complex, and so we adopted an organizational system to enable educators to be able to pick them up and use them. We also reorganized the standards to follow a table format, and I should note you have a version of the standards that we will put through a final design before it goes live on our website to make sure that it's visually appealing and there are no table breaks across pages, things like that. So it's very, very important. But we wanted to make sure that we had a final version before we invested in the full PDF version. Finally, we leveraged the stakeholder feedback to remove areas of overlap, to remove duplication, and to make sure that we were providing standards and indicators that were as clear and crisp as possible. Next slide, please. In response to the feedback that we received on April 25th, we made further changes. We really appreciated SBOE's push to look again at the standards and make sure that everywhere we could, we were taking advantage of the opportunity to differentiate similar skills that students need to be working on as they advance along their educational trajectory across grade levels. We also took another look at internal coherence and made sure that there was a very clear purpose and clarity in each standard and in each indicator. Finally, we added additional language consistent with the comments that I already provided to make sure that the distinction between standards and indicators was crystal clear. Next slide, please. In regard to looking at rigorous content and advanced skills, we share state board's feedback, or we share state board's feedback, excuse me, and I really appreciated the feedback and the opportunity to take one final look and ensure that the standards are appropriately rigorous and they call on the students to leverage their advanced skills throughout our system. And I'll talk a little bit about specific investments that we do next. I also do think it is very important to note that in these standards, as in all of our standards, the skills build on each other. We have a more sophisticated vocabulary for many different types of academic content currently than we do for SEM. And this goes back to some of the conversations that we've had with this group over the past couple of months. In our first conversation about this topic, we were asked about what the national expertise looked like in this space and what the landscape looked like. I described that landscape, and I described it as being somewhat less robust than the national landscape that we have around other academic content areas such as literacy or such as mathematics. This means that the vocabulary that we have in this space is not yet as sophisticated as it will be in one years and in 4 years. So we took every opportunity to go through and make sure that we were being as crisp and as clear as possible in regard to what we expected standards students to know and be able to do within each grade level. And also, there are certain terms that do repeat across grade levels, but that does not mean that the work that students are doing is exactly the same in each grade level. Instead, the level of sophistication and the situations in which they will need to leverage these SEL standards differs. And I'll spend a little bit more time on this issue. Next slide. Specifically, in regard to growth on the SEC, and this was a point that was highlighted to us in SBOE's feedback letter of April 25th. We made specific adjustments in order to make sure that everywhere we could, we were clearly articulating the different levels of sophistication that we expected students to show up with in, for example, grades 3 through 5, as for example, in grades 12 through adult, and you'll see where we changed the modification of challenges, obstacles, and setbacks in grades 3 through 5. We then added minor and major setbacks, minor and major challenges in adversity to grades 12 through adult. To highlight that we expect students to be able to react to small things differently when they are more tender age than we do when they're more advanced in their scholastic career. Next slide, please. Similarly, we took an opportunity to take another look in the social and cultural awareness standard, looking at grades and looking at the vertical articulation across those grade bands, and made sure that the progression was appropriate and fully reflected, for example, the level of adult support that we would expect a kindergartner to need in meeting this skill, as compared to the ability to evaluate that we would would expect a student in high school, 12th grade student, one adult student to have in regard to this skill, while still maintaining the technical standards. Next slide. We also appreciated the opportunity to do a very, very careful review of the standards to make sure that every standard and every indicator was as clear and as crisp as possible. And here we provided some line edits that we made in order to ensure that the terminology is quite clear and able to be easily leveraged by our educators and easily understood by our students. Next slide, please. Finally, we made additional changes to distinguish between SEL standards and SEL indicators. And as I shared previously, we maintained that terminology because this is an issue on which our writing group spent significant time and built on the work that they are currently leading in DC schools. And we wanted to be sure that in every opportunity, we were able to take advantage of the great work that's underway here in DC, and that these standards serve as a support rather than asking our educators to go back to the drawing board and to reinvent what they are already doing. Next slide, please. State Board's memo of April 25th asked us to consider making 4 changes. We made 3 of those changes that I have just talked through. On the final one, we carefully considered what the State Board was asking us to do here. And here, the request was to make sure that everywhere we could, we were removing across competencies, so competencies, self-awareness and self-management were the examples given, and then across standards, similar sets of knowledge and skills. This is a topic that the writing group talked about, and it's something that we considered carefully with our national expert. The example that State Board provided in the April 25th letter to our team talked about academic content work. And dissimilar from our academic content work, SEL standards need to be something that are taught by every single individual in a school building, which means that you may have your math teacher working on self-awareness, and you may have your PE teacher working on self-management. And both of those individuals need to make sure that they are thinking about all of the skills that students need in those spaces. The work of becoming proficient in social emotional learning is not work that stops once you leave your classroom. It happens in the hallway, it happens in the cafeteria, it happens on the bus, it happens in the community, it's happening in this room right now. And we wanted to be sure that always while balancing, you can't put every skill in every standard, but we wanted to be sure that everywhere we had a critical skill, that skill was aligned in the standard and with the competency for which that would call on. To the extent to which that there was one example provided, we took a careful look at that example and declined to make the change. To the extent to which there are other examples that State Board would like us to look at in this space, we'd be happy to do so, because this is an area that I really do want to be sure we get right, and we value significant impact from this group in helping us make sure that we are getting all of this work right, not just with our SEL standards, but all of our work in this space. Next slide, please, and then what follows. So we have a few next steps, and Andrew laid them out very well for us at the start of this presentation. We anticipate a vote of support on these standards at the May 15th public meeting, and we are actively preparing implementation resources. Part of the reason why we're so excited for this vote in May is because we are hearing from the field a real hunger to shift for the implementation of this work. We are winding down this school year, which means that our educators are already started thinking about what next year looks like and are excited to have in hand a final standards. We're also rapidly preparing for our inaugural Gym Club at SEL meeting, which we're really looking forward to. All of this work is designed to support implementation next school year. As this group also noted, we are excited to be closing out our first advisory cohort. We're working with 16 LEAs on our school climate survey instrument. And that is one of the ways that we will begin to measure the implementation of these standards. And so as we implement the standards in the 24-25 school year and the school culture climate tool, we are excited to continue to work is to make sure that implementation is happening with fidelity. And it's these tools combined that will help us get there. I'm happy to stop talking now and to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the presentation, and I want to make sure that we have time now for questions from my great peers. Who would like to start with a question?
Thank you. So I'm still, first a confession, I've only looked in detail at the standards that have come before the board. I have not looked at any others. But like each of the subject that we have looked at, the formatting is different. Just a different language around it and it's set up. So like here we have standards and indicators. For social studies, we had driving concepts, standards. And like I know if you look at all the standards in total, they've been done over a long span of time. But even in the ones that I've looked at, there's so much differential in it. So like if I'm a social studies teacher, I'm also expected to implement SBL standards. I'm just curious why we don't have more of a streamlined version. So it's I don't doubt the ability of our teachers to figure out the differences, but it seems like I don't. They don't seem to be apples to apples if you look across. So the standards for SEL are really top level, right? Are very top level. And the indicators are detailed. So like to me, it's more like the indicators are the standards, and standard in this case is a driving category. I don't know what the term is for, but it's more like a general big overview. Driving competence or competence. I mean, they use the language competence, so maybe that's tripping me up as kind of unnecessarily confusing. I don't know. It seems like it would be valuable to have some consistency across standards, particularly when we're asking teachers who are implementing those other standards to also implement these. I imagine there are other things.
I appreciate the spirit of this question so very much because the work that my team is doing is designed to make implementation easy for our educators so that it makes a difference for our students. These standards and all of our academic content standards are actually designed to change educative practice. And the way that we do that is to make sure that the individuals leading the classroom understand what they are and how to use that. In order to do that, there's a lot of additional layers of information that are required, and that's the work that's underway right now, which is support social studies implementation, and it's the work that my team has already begun to integrate the social emotional learning standards into our other academic content standards. The heart of your question is, all of these things are called standards. Why do they have these different levels of articulation? And why aren't we calling them the same thing? And the best answer that I can give you is twofold. The first of which is, in many cases, we build on national standards in the space. And we do that because teacher labor markets are localized, but there is some transfer and transition across state lines. And so where there are strong national standards, which there has been a push for over the last 2 decades, first with the Common Core state standards, and then particularly in spaces where there is some level of national agreement about what quality looks like. There are national organizations who collections of states that come together and develop standards. When they come up with terminology and it's already in use, there is some more than the minimus benefit associated with adopting that terminology. And that's the space that we're in here with the SEL standards. But the question that you're asking is really good. It is one that our writing group grappled with, and in grappling with it, what they determined was most appropriate and most supportive for implementation here in DC was to build on what's already happening, which is under the lens of the CASEL framework. So CASEL uses the term competency for the term self-awareness. then the term standard to describe the competency for the, short paragraph that's at the top of this document. And then the indicators further describe those. And so that's how we landed on this.
So functionally, an indicator is like a standard that we see in social studies.
I think that's certainly one way to think about it.
That's all I think.
You could send for One Representative Williams.
Thanks, Representative Patterson. Thank you both for all the work on this, and thank you, Kathleen, for the thorough revisions to support all those changes that look like a really big adjustment. My question is similar to like what we were thinking about with like social studies and kind of the work that's going on with social studies right now. Like, how do you think about implementation? And just like you had started by talking about centering educators in the process with this to make, because we're going to be the ones who are using it. And what have we learned through these standards to like and make it work well?
Thank you so much for this question, and I love that this question is from you, because you are going to be the one using them. So if what I am saying does not resonate, I want you to tell me. You are my audience, Representative Williams, for this, alongside more than 8,000 of your peers, right? We have roughly 8,500 teachers here in DC. And so the supports have to be multifaceted, and they can't just come from our team at OSSE. We need the support of our educators and our LEAs in order to build out the resources and make sure that these are implemented with fidelity on the ground. But there are some foundational resources that OSSE is really well positioned to provide and already working on. In the SEL space, the two biggest pushes that we are making at this moment over the next 6 weeks are to finalize our SEL toolkit, which is a comprehensive document that includes resources that educators can take if they are looking into learning about a certain standard. We have also already started voting on our learning management system, competency and standards aligned, because those areas I consider pretty locked based on the feedback that we've gotten from this body to date. Resources in order to help build awareness for some LEAs that may not, and some educators that may not be as familiar with this work. And so those are asynchronous resources that we will continue to build out in the coming months. The next big event that we're looking towards is that June 12th convening. And similar to the work that we did in social studies, we're really excited to bring educators together, because this work is so much smarter and so much better when educators are able to work together in order to figure out how to implement it with fidelity, rather than to have me put together a document and say, go for it. So we are really excited to convene and to create that forum and support that. The next piece of the puzzle that's really important, and this is work that will build out over the course of the summer and as well as during the 24-25 school year, is the integration work. So you guys have had the opportunity to spend a great deal of time with me in recent years, because I lead all of our academic content work. It is not by accident that the SEL standard is laid on the academic content side of our shop at OSSE. It is specifically so that my team of academic content experts can be well positioned to prepare academic content materials and resources for our educators that fully reflect and infuse these standards. One of the most effective ways to teach social emotional learning is to do it in the context of academic content. So if you have a student who is struggling with a difficult math concept, that student needs not only mathematics skill building, but also persistence, perseverance, a growth mindset, the kind of things that we expect to see in SEL. And that's work that's underway on the team right now, because there are certain skills in SEL that really lend themselves to dedicated time and practice, particularly if there's an issue with which a group of students or a class is struggling, but many of the skills later work best if they are fully integrated into the rest of the coursework and the day. So now I want to know what you didn't hear that you would like to hear, so I can add it to my.
I mean, I agree with the approach that making it integrated. I think, and Representative Chang brought this up at like our last meeting, just like being mindful like of what's on the teacher's plate and, you know, how are we communicating to schools that they have to make this available to teachers, or how we, you know, what part of the year are we rolling it out? Like, are we giving teachers time to actually look at it, you know? And I'm not asking Oxy to like mandate anything, but like, even like, like strong recommendations to like, you know, I guess the fear would be that we do all this work, we go back and forth for months on social and emotional learning standards, and teachers never look at it, you know, and then it's not gonna help anyone. So, I'm just kind of curious, like, how we can, like, are you asking schools how they're going to, like, what their plan is? Because I think, yes, making it available to teachers, like, outside of our day is great, and the ones who have time and are passionate will do so. But I would also want teachers to have time inside the school day or coming back from the summer to like think about that.
I so appreciate this push, and I would not agree with you more that the last thing that we want is for these standards to live just in this document, just in this room. And I am calling to mind something that one of the invited public witnesses said at the March public meeting on this topic, which is that there was a coalition of the excited working on this work. And with the standards, we actually expect everyone to be working on this work beyond the coalition of the excited. So we have a couple of tools in our toolbox and a couple of ways of making sure that we are through all of our LEAs and providing the kind of support that is needed beyond that coalition of the excited. And
How are you gonna ensure that they use them? Like, you
the
know,
standards.
yeah, what data could you collect to
Well,
know?
this is where our school climate survey instrument becomes really, really powerful. So right now, we are in the final stages of our advisory cohort. We're working with 16 LEAs. And we are getting feedback from them about question items and question instruments. And ultimately, the through line that we are drawing here for all of our DC schools on both the academic and content side of the house and by using our social and emotional learning standards is we need to set the floor. The standards set the floor. We need to provide support to make sure that everyone's reaching that floor. And then we need to use the measurement tool to determine the extent to which that floor is being met and or there's a need for additional resources. And so we're in a position where next year we'll be in a really different place because we will have comprehensive data from our DC LEAs about school climate. We don't have that today, and so we're not well positioned to say, this is what we're hearing is working well here. We can say this is what we're hearing. We can't say that for every school in the system in the way that we will be able to next year with that school climate survey instrument. But that really is one of the tools that we will be using to ensure that we're providing supports where they are.
So I'm hearing you too, that this is kind of like the upgrades in the report card in action that are connected with
I do
Right.
think that's a fair way.
the
to think
implementation of
about it.
our standard.
I think another way that I think about standards is they are necessary, but they are not sufficient. I mean, we need them in order to align on vision, language, the skills that we need our students to learn. But what we actually need to make a difference for kids is to change classroom practice. So standards serves as a communication vehicle and as a tool. It's appropriate to spend significant time and energy developing them because they have real meaning. They serve as our statement as a city of what we want our kids to know and be able to do. And I think you guys probably know because I come here a lot to talk about it. I love the standards development process. It's incredible. And so what actually makes a difference is the work that you're doing with your students every day in the classroom. So the area that I spend most of my time is thinking about how to shorten the bridge between the work that lives in standards document and the work that you're reading every day in your classroom. And it's a hard problem. I mean, I really love this conversation because there are areas where I think this is happening. There are certainly areas, this is an area where I'm excited to continue improving. But that is how I think about it, really, that's necessary, but not sufficient.
I'm gonna take one privilege real quick before I go on to what the girls in the left. So what you're saying in response to what I'm saying is there really is no deep in making sure that they implement this. And outside of the talk about climate, it's coming down to like, if you don't implement it, nothing happens or what.
It is very similar to other standards that exist within our system. So whether we're talking health standards, social studies standards, that the same that exists, where our role as the state education agency is to promulgate the standards and provide supports. And so we are, as Assistant Superintendent Ross was stating, one of the things that we are trying to press upon and grow upon is how to build those supports, but really that lives in the LEA level, and like LEAs are responsible for making sure that they're implementing in the best way possible. And yeah, I think going back to what Representative Henderson was saying about the, I was somebody who taught science standards, I taught math standards, I taught social studies standards, I taught reading standards, I taught across grade levels, across school systems. I looked at a lot of different standards. The challenge for me was not reading the standards, the challenge was taking that and making it live in my classroom and implementing it. And so I think that is the area where convening is one of our powers as the state education agency, which is why we are really excited about this June 12th SEL convening, which is a way to bring educators together and make it live. And so that is another way to have a power, even if it is not maybe the power that you're envisioning.
Okay, I just want to make sure that as representatives, that we are able to hold LEAs, accountable for what the standards that are being passed by this body. And the work that you guys are doing, because a lot of times, as Representative we said, a lot of things just sit on the shelf, and we don't want to say the great word that children need just sit on that shelf, but even hold people accountable, because we're accountable to parents. We're asking us to make sure it's the same. So I appreciate your answer. I'm just mulling around my head of how I would be held accountable and trying to hold other people accountable for actually implementing. So I appreciate that.
To play on top, I mean, even more than being accountable to parents, we're accountable to children,
Right,
right?
exactly.
We have kids in our schools every single day who show up ready to learn.
Right.
They're hungry for the skills that they need. Those include the academic content skills that they need, and they include the social emotional skills
Right.
that they need. So I am very excited that this work exists alongside and is going to be very fast followed by our school climate survey. I'm sorry.
Which I love. Thank you.
And so we really are in a position where we are building the system in order to ensure that there is a lot of sunshine into what is happening in our schools in regard to social and emotional learning, which is not a space that we were in a year ago in the absence of standards. I think we should about that.
And sometimes if we have to change some of the things we measure on our report card, we can make this something to hold them more accountable, because as we know, what gets measured gets done. So that being said, I'm going to go to what the Representative Goulet for his question.
Thank you so much, and I'll keep it quick here. I just want to thank you for your collaboration. This has been a really collaborative process where you took an extra month to be able to sit back with us, you put the changes in, and that's been the way it's been the whole process. So I want to just thank you for that. And just looking at the standards, it's really clear how the skills build on each other. You can see from one grade band to the next, how that when you master those skills, you're ready for the next. So just really looks thoughtful. I'm excited to support it, and just congratulations on a really good product here. And as Representative Patterson said, we just got to make sure we implement it, but it looks really good. And I'm really proud of the work you did on it, and glad to be able to be with you on it. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, I want to go to board for Representative O'Leary.
I have a couple of questions. One is a comment. Probably you all remember when you were in kindergarten, first grade, at morning meeting. And that was the beginning of the day. And I've talked about the short of circles with seniors to really a morning meeting every day. And it really worked. I just want to plug into the sort of circle thing again. Please, and I know Representative Williams is asking for a mandate.
No, I did not ask.
That's all right. Completely. I know I've said something, because I've been hearing this for 6 years now. It doesn't have to, can't mandate the LEA to do something, so to speak. But this restorative circle is something that really needs to be pushed forward.
Thank you for that feedback, and in case it's helpful, the individual who coordinates our restorative justice work also sits on my team, supports this portfolio, and right now, Marcus, who we have met, and Jessica Delaney, who coordinates our restorative work, are working in collaboration to plan the June 12th meetings. We are already thinking about these two things as inextricably determined.
Good. Okay, so now my two questions are, how do teachers, then it goes back to the conversation, how do teachers know what to do with the standards? And the second question I have is, how are teachers trained for August?
Yeah.
So I know that probably the answer has to do with June 12th and beyond, all right? But in order for teachers to be comfortable with this, because I know it's extremely important to me as an educator, it's more important than the subject in a lot of ways. But like Representative Williams was saying, a lot of people just take this folder and they put it on the shelf. And so they got the standard, so they got the curriculum or whatever. But it's the implementation that's important. And I think that it needs to be a push from the leader of the school, the mayor, to make sure that this is understood by everybody. But she's the one that can.
You want to hold accountable teachers that are not,
It's not holding teachers accountable. It's making the worth of the project count.
Yeah, and I think, you know, this is another iteration of the great question that Representative Williams asked, that Representative Patterson built on, which is how do we make sure that this document is actually living in classrooms? And there are a couple of ways that we do that. The first way that we do that is by making the high quality information that we have from research, that we have from high quality practice, easily accessible to educators. And we can do that a couple of different ways. We can do that by elevating best practices. We can use our bully pulpit power and say, this is the great thing that we are excited to celebrate. We can use that, or we can do that by bringing people together, our convening power, and that's what we're doing on June 12th. So you're right, June 12th is part of the example, or is part of the answer to this question. And then we can do that by making sure that those resources live on our learning management system. And this tool has been a game changer for our team, because for the first time using this tool, we are able to make things really accessible to every single individual who is working in a DC school without requiring them to come down to 1050 First Street or to go over to take time away from the school building during the day. They can access that asynchronously during their, or access our resources asynchronously during their planning time for 15 minutes in the morning when they're, you know, kicking off their school day and already thinking ahead to, you know, what the week is looking like. And so by making sure that we are really using the social emotional learning standards throughout the rest of the work that our team is doing and is supporting under LMS, we can make sure that happens, that all of our educators have access to these resources. Some of the feedback, as this group knows, we have worked with our teacher advisory council and our principal advisory council on these standards. And some of the feedback that we got from those bodies was that OSCE has a real opportunity to lead in this space, which I take very, very seriously, and make sure that it is clear to our educators how we are integrating social emotional learning to every single one of our professional learning opportunities. And so my team is working on that right now, because it's a great idea. We should be doing that. And so I'm really glad to be in a position that we are approaching having a strong, comprehensive set of standards that will enable us to do that. Without the standards, we're not able to do that, because we move forward with something and we say, this is what we expect. And someone says, well, in my school, that's not actually what we expect. But with the standards, we set the minimum expectation for all of our schools, all of our educators, and help give them the language. And then we have to provide the resources, and our LEAs are excellent partners in this. I mean, the work that our instructional leaders do is really about supporting teacher practice and making sure that our teachers have the resources that they need, the curricular materials, the supplemental resources to implement these standards with fidelity.
Can I make a suggestion on the 12th of June
Sure.
that you, give a brief 1 or 2 question survey to every participant of what they think SEL is? Or give an example or show and tell something for all the people in the room.
Thank you so much for the suggestion. We will take it under consideration, and we always do surveys at the end of our convening. So we certainly have, at the beginning of the meeting. Okay, well, I will take it under advisement. Thank you very much.
I want to allow for any other questions, let's say follow-up questions. I'll go back to, Representative Henderson.
Do you have a sense of what percentage of schools or LPAs are already implementing an SEL curriculum? How many of them are absolutely aligned?
This is a great question. So we are in process of collecting now for the first time information from all of our DC schools under a tool called the course data collection, information about curriculum materials. So we don't have that information. Yes.
I think we had a follow-up by one representative.
Yeah, I just have a comment. I just want to say that, like, I think my question, which Representative Patterson bumped on around like accountability or just knowing like what's being useful to be able to then use towards continuous improvement is not meant as like an attack on OSSI. It's more just like, I think everyone has a role to play with regards to DCPS, charters, the board, council, everyone. And so I think we just still need to figure that out together so that like when we have rich resources, they can be implemented.
Thank you for that, Representative Williams. I took it in the spirit it was offered. I mean, this is really the central question in education, right? How do we make sure that we are providing the individuals with the biggest impact on student learning and lives with the tools that they need to make that impact as meaningful and positive and productive as possible?
Thank you, Representative Williams. I want to give the opportunity to any of our students, our representative, if you had any questions whatsoever, because this affects you guys a lot. So you're graduating, but it will affect your peers that are in lower grades. If you had any questions on this particular subject matter.
A repeat question. I asked it at an earlier meeting, but I forgot like the specifics of it.
Can you speak up a little bit into the mic?
I asked the question at a previous meeting, but I forgot like the specific like logistics behind it. So I was wondering, since SEL isn't really enforced, how are we going to track its implementation? I know we have like the climate surveys for schools now, but how are we going to track like its effectivity since different teachers can teach in different ways across different schools and it's not a specific course?
Yeah, thank you so much for this question. I just want to repeat it back to make sure I heard it. I think you're asking, how are we going to make sure that these standards are implemented with fidelity? We have different teachers who have different teaching styles and are going to teach them different ways. My short, quick answer to that is we expect different teachers to teach these standards in different ways because they're working with students with different needs. And so we are excited to support a variety of different styles of implementation. And we already see that underway, and we already provide support around that. So we have support right now around learning social emotional learning through, for example, leveraging dramatic skills, which can be particularly useful for students who are more comfortable developing their social emotional learning skills when envisioning certain situations than when thinking through traumatic situations that they themselves have been through. We also have students who are in the middle of crisis and need to engage in a different kind of social emotional learning. And so we expect that to look differently and to live differently in the classroom. And I think it may have been in response to one of your questions at a prior session, Representative Washington, we talked a little bit about how we also expect this to look very different across the grade level continuum. So Representative O'Leary mentioned morning meeting, which happens in many elementary schools, and is a great place for the teacher to kick off that morning meeting with a mindful moment to start with, to start inviting students to begin leveraging their social emotional learning skills. We wouldn't necessarily expect to see that in every classroom, although we could. And so it really does look different in terms of measuring that implementation. That is where our school climate survey instrument will become really helpful, powerful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Washington. So, I just want to thank you guys for coming out. I'll be in for a thorough discussion on the SEL standards that they will forward to continue our collaboration to move forward to the movements coming up in the next couple of weeks. Okay, well, thank you so much. At this time, we'll now debrief on the April public meeting panel, which was on the topic of fiscal year 2025 proposed budget. Do members have any comments on the next step? Right. All right, I'm looking at members, are there any questions? I unfortunately missed that meeting and everything, so I was away, so if there's questions or anything that we would like to discuss in general, what the representative?
Well, I just want to thank Darren for setting the panel up. I thought it was a really great collection of truly expert witnesses in DC. And I think the follow-up really is just trying to see how we can continue to advocate, I think, in our individual capacities and as a board to get some of these changes in the budget. It's going to be really interesting few weeks. Budget Support Act hearing. I don't know, are we testifying at the Budget Support Act hearing or not on Friday? I don't think we
The
probably.
agency is not signed up. I don't know if individual members are signed up. You all have not expressed, normally we do the agency wants to testify. The staff writes the testimony and the president gives testimony on behalf of the agency. So we're not heard from
Yeah.
members. So that is something we're all interested in doing. I would also suggest that you touch base with President Thompson, if she can't, is not able to look at the agency wide testimony, then another person might be able to, if that is something that we would like to do.
I don't think it would be necessary. I think just important because you got the formula up there. So just, in an individual capacity, I'll be attending just to support. Hopefully even increasing the formula if they can find the funds to do so, because we've got a lot of cuts at schools across the city. And I think that was really highlighted well in the testimony we heard from them. So I'll be testifying Friday, and if anybody else is going to be joining us, certainly be there. I think the other big issue will be certainly the child care pay equity fund, which also could be impacted through Budget Support Act. So those will be the issues I see on the horizon. But I thought the panel did such a great job, and Darren, thanks for putting it together for us. So that's all I got.
Were there other comments from representatives? Representative Henderson?
No, I'm just saying it was a little discouraging in some respects, just confronted with the limitations we have, but our advocacy is important, so we should just keep pushing for what our students need, even if the pot of available resources is shrinking or limited. We just need to keep asking for what we need.
Were there particular ones that you feel that board should focus on?
I agree with the priorities we've outlined. Our budget, our initial budget letters. Some of those are still live, like some of them we got. But we did, certainly the rest of the literacy recommendations is one of them. I think we should keep pushing for it.
Thank you. Others?
I know the schools in Ward 4 are getting hurt big time. As far as losing staff. And the reason they're losing is they're gaining enrollment and losing staff because the budget is set up for the previous enrollment. The interesting thing that's happened with our schools, almost all the schools in the ward, the enrollment has jumped. But the money's not following jump at all.
I thought of something, Representative O'Leary triggers something in my head. I think that we can do for continuous advocacy on this issue, because I think you know, a lot of the problem we're facing right now is because they got so far behind on the union contract. That is the big issue right now, is that you are essentially trying to fit 6 years of inflation into one fiscal year. So 12.5%, you know, usually would be an amazing increase to the UPSFF, but this year for DCPS, it's not enough because we got 3.5 years behind on the contract. We finally approved it, it's expired again, so now we're trying to do the current year plus one on top of that, 6 years in one. So I think what this board can do is keep on the chancellor. I think it's really disappointing. We haven't seen more progress on it. But that, I think, is why, you know, we see such a large increase that in any other year would appear good, but yet, you know, buying power of schools is going down about 5 to 25%, depending on the school. You know, and I know, you know, we don't really share, but Lafayette's getting hit really hard. Chaney's getting hit hard with staff cuts that are really going to be devastating to those schools. So hopefully, if the chancellor can start negotiating this in a more timely manner, we won't get behind and we can get on a more regular schedule of inflation covering the UPSFF. And then we won't have to be back in this boat again, hopefully, but we'll see. But I think that's what we can do, is just try to keep every chance we get, stay on the chancellor and encourage him to negotiate in good faith in a timely fashion.
Thank you, sir. Were there any other questions before we go to the break? We'll have a break after this. Seeing no other questions, I'm going to suggest that we move to a break, 5 minute break for you guys to be back on time. I'd like moving us along, so if you can be back in 5 minutes, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
I'll try to do that 5K when it's the 18th.
Yeah.
Can we still sign up for it?
I think so.
I'd like to go. I mean, that would be.
That's not looking like.
We got a crew. I don't know if I can shake. We got other people who do the space. All right, I'll do it. I'll try to sign up tonight.
I just was like.
I haven't been up. Like,
I don't think we're aiming for a prize.
My prize will be finishing it without getting it, but I will sign up. I just, I'm trying to get my schedule.
Yeah, so like, yeah, Carl, and I want. Who I think that is, the student. Teacher. session after having a brief break. As the people make their way back to their chair, their respectful chairs. As a reminder to members and the viewing public, our working sessions will now include a standard agenda item where we vote on public meeting panel topic for 2 months before each meeting. At last month's working meeting, we decided to postpone the vote on the June panel topic. Tonight, we will focus on potential panel topics for our June and July public meetings, followed by vote. Every Monday, our fellows email out the roundup. The first item in the email is the 2024 public meeting panel topics. As we advance, we discuss and vote on the panel topics suggested at each working session. If no topics have been proposed in the tracker, the floor will be open for suggestions. If no suggestions are given, there is a vote not to have a panel for that month. 2 topics have been proposed by members for June: student health, which we began to discuss last month, and math. Okay. So we will now discuss those 2 topics, is that right?
Yes. So on here, you all now have to decide what we're gonna do. The 2 options for student health, the other second suggestion was back. Student health and Representative Washington and Representative Blair, and we received the math of Representative Chen and Representative Best. Boards on September. Thoughts?
Representative Blair.
feedback?
I like both. I would, you could do one in June, one in July. I don't care the order, but I think they're both really timely topics for the
So
discussion.
that is no votes, whatever you all decide.
Yeah, but I do like both. So I support both. I hope because we're probably not doing an August meeting, I assume,
We
right?
do not have a working session, excuse me, we do not have a public meeting. We do
So,
have a working session.
yeah, but yeah, I'm ambivalent to the order we go in, but I think both are really important.
Representative Williams.
Yeah, the risk of sidetrack, you guys, like, schools are starting to get back to work in August, so, like, obviously, this has been in place since before I got on the board, but why do we break in August and not July? I feel like July would be a better month to miss.
That is also completely up to the members of the state board. You all can change that, the staff.
I raised the same question a while ago.
Yeah, and so it's really up to the members of the state board to propose any changes on the schedule. When we voted on the schedule back in December, the only change I made was once the representative suggested regarding the team. And I think there was another schedule. Something later on that she wrote and made both of those changes and for voted on the revised schedule.
Is it too late to do that?
And that's what I was about to say. I may be out of order, but I can't actually recall what we decided, but I'm in almost agreement with Representative from Ward 8, Reed, about the same thing, because I know it works for a lot of people, just how we got representatives who are teachers, educators, that just works better than August.
There's a lot
For a
going
lot of
on.
people, what I'm saying, and most schools start back in August. We start somewhere thereabouts, so most everybody else is back, why are we back, and change it to meet the school.
Well, none of the agencies, so like no one in the ag cluster meets. No one, there's no external, like, so they do stuff with LEAs, no one does stuff with the state board of members. Because they're preparing schools to reopen.
I think it was the year of the pandemic. We decided not to be off in August. Because we wanted to, for the opening of school, that was the year, well, the year
So about the 2021.
21, yes. You know, so we met in August. I agree completely that we should be off in July, come back to work, because we need to be working towards the opening of school. That's much too big of a gap.
But we don't have any to do those. And all the people that
I'm
do.
talking about meetings, members of the board working with the schools who are just opening up. That it's much better for us to be working in August for the opening of school and not working in August for the opening of school.
Well, I just want to say, so like, not having a public meeting doesn't mean the state board members are not working. People in school, Like that doesn't, I don't think that changes.
Yeah, it's an opportunity to hear from the public, like if there are issues that arise. So what happens often is like August, people are noticing school's starting to open, and it's like, I went back in the building and I noticed my HVAC isn't working. I went back in the building and noticed this and this and this. And it gives people the opportunity to like say those things before September. Now, granted, we're not miracle workers, but it gives opportunity to hear from the public if buildings are up to par. And that way we can like relay that information to our agency partners. But who was it, July-ish, we did a walkthrough, like Councilor Lewis George was doing something, well, actually she did it early. But August is opportunity to say like, yay or nay, did that stuff happen? So it's just an opportunity to hear from the public, like, do they feel like buildings up to par? And a lot of issues arise when,
So, no, I mean, again, we can have the meeting, but if we stick to the schedule of the third Wednesday, that's actually before school's open. So parents won't be back for Wednesday. But we can change this again, I'm just like, so if that is the case, we want to check the schedule.
But I would like to suggest that we look at June, and then we can come back and kind of discuss which month is gonna be, if that's allowable, because I know we vote on a whole year, kind of sort of like thing.
On,
As far as our
with the
schedule, our
calendar,
meetings, our
yes.
calendar years of what would be, and I want to be respectful of that, what it would take, we want to make a change to that schedule, of what we agree to be for the year, the calendar year. So, if we can finalize June, and then think about revising the schedule to look at some of the things that were brought up. Is that okay, folks? So I think it will bring us back to the discussion. June, we were looking at those two subjects. I'm hearing, that we like both. Is there any other discussion on those?
Is there so on the health topic, is there a time? What's the time boundary or urgency?
The health topic one has to do with athletic trainers and nurses. Those are the two broad. Right, we were going to be.
Yeah.
Talking about that, that's what I'm talking about. And
The,
so yeah, then you have.
I was gonna say the other big thing was like, automatic charter defibrillators for, seats are undergoing. Current conversations.
So those were the two health issues was, okay.
one of the time pressures for the math piece is that on Pi Day, there was a coalition of educators and school leaders that put out a series of recommendations, and I feel a little bit late to the conversation already, since we, so in a way, I think Brendan, if you have more context here, I think if there is no time pressure for when we have those conversations, would like to make sure that we have the math one as close to March as possible, which, I guess the difference between June and July is not super significant, but I think I see a lot of opportunity for this coalition of educators to be able to move this forward, and I see our role in it. I don't want to postpone it too far.
And for math, if I'm accurate. Yes, probably said that. Did Representative Parker, did he introduce something on math today? I know I had heard that there was a possibility that he would introduce something on math today. And with that being said, I know there are others talking about math, about us doing math, and that was what you represented best. So I wanted to make sure we were sequenced in that as well to support the work that's happening at the council.
Yeah.
So they marry each other on the math.
Yes.
Representative Best brought this to us, before our committees form, so.
I know you guys.
February.
Math, so-
Yeah, and our committee is interested to make that work, so.
All right. So that
also the math standards, because we brought that up at the public meeting last time, right? But the math standards haven't been revised for over 10 years.
right. So that being said, we can have one. Do we want that? All right, yeah.
I just sort of time information, which is so confusion, but just is like.
Great reason, honestly.
There's nothing wrong with that. I felt that all. We understand you at a time. Right.
I'm going to come back. Like, go back to this. I'll be here.
No, that's-
I don't have any preference. The math one doesn't do the, you did so I've heard it.
We appreciate that reference, Washington. Thank you. Hearing, do we take a vote on this, is that correct?
Yes, it's all right there. We'll call the roll.
Okay, so, I'm not sure exactly. Now we'll call it this, and now we'll take a vote on, okay, so I'll do them one by one. I'm going to start with student health, as for our June meeting. If I can show my hands, and do we have to do a roll call?
Roll call for it.
I apologize, and that red, right on the script, so the roll is gonna be called and closed. So this one,
Representative,
yeah, student, this is for, health.
this is to have the student health panel in June. Representative Kelly. It says yes or no.
Yes.
Representative for. Representative Washington. Representative Best.
This is for either the.
Yeah, it's gonna be either or.
So no.
Representative Chang.
No.
Representative Boulay.
No.
Representative Henderson. Representative O'Leary.
Yes.
Representative Reed.
So this is the consultation over there, Representative Reed.
We have to pick one.
Pick one now.
Well, right now, we're voting on what's not the first time.
We're voting on.
So yes or no?
Health, yes or no for health,
For student health.
to be done in June.
What do you want?
Yes.
Representative Williams.
Yeah,
Representative Patterson.
No,
The majority of the board votes no. So on to the second topic.
so the next topic that we will be doing a roll call on is math, be, done in June. Call the roll, man.
Representative Kelly.
Yes.
Representative Fairford.
Yes.
Representative Washington. Representative Best.
Yes.
Representative Chang.
Yes.
Representative Boulay.
Yes.
Representative Henderson.
Yes.
Representative O'Leary.
No.
Representative Reed.
Yes.
Representative Williams.
no.
Oh, you know.
You
Okay.
can say no.
Representative Patterson.
Yes.
Help.
By majority vote, there will be a math panel in June.
Thank you very much for everybody, folks. I know this was hard going to get your own colleagues on which one. This is not easy, but I'm glad that we do it in a very gracious type of manner. Okay, with that being said, we will save July for another discussion. Another time, okay?
We would say July for June,
So,
or like that's only other time.
right,
Can we vote for changing the public meeting to August?
we,
And the thing I would wanna know is like, are there, I don't know what staffs like, how this would affect y'all's plans, because if there are, if that's gonna influence, I mean, I'm a teacher, so I have time off. But, like, I don't know what that looks like for other people, if it's really an easy fix, and if it is, then I would propose that we bring it to August, but if not, then we keep it.
what I will entertain, for matter of just process, is because we have passed a calendar year, is that we entertain the proposal to change the calendar to have the meeting for August. That is the recommendation, if we could do that. So if I could do a motion to move it.
As of the new bylaws, you can vote on these things in working session. My only concern is because you voted on the schedule during a public meeting, you have to vote to change that schedule. in a-
That's what I was thinking. I
So you
wanted to
would
follow.
just have to do that in a public meeting.
Right.
You couldn't do that in this meeting, but you can propose a change. Any board member can propose a change to the schedule, but you won't approve the schedule.
So if you
So
want,
I'd
if
like
you want to make the
propose a
But you can
change.
do that at the public. can't do it this way because that was a public
I
meeting.
thought we can propose it here and vote on
No.
it.
So you can, but like the calendar, because if you propose it here, then you would have to vote here. But you can
Yes,
propose
correct.
something here and vote later.
Correct, even if it's a recommendation, we can't make a recommendation that we would want to vote on it in a public meeting. I believe it's what Representative,
So what, are you saying you want to vote to add something to the agenda for the public? That is a different thing. To say, I want to add to the agenda for the May public meeting, revising of the state board schedule. That is something that can be done. You can't vote on the actual schedule here.
Possible friendly amendment, because it sounds a bit like a cluster. And maybe something to think about for next year when we develop a schedule, but could we do possibly like a special meeting in August to hear concerns about, or whatever you want to tell us about schools? Is it the piece about like, we want to hear people from like school buildings to let us know like what's going on that you want to do? It might just be easier to just have a
Yeah,
special
I
meeting.
think it's just important to give the public, teachers, parents, other agencies, like the space to be able, I don't even necessarily see the need, like necessarily for a panel, like if there's something that we feel like is important, we got a panel, but I think that just, there's so much going on coming back to school, right? And we are the public's voice on this issue, that it just feels weird that, oh, school starts in 2 weeks, but we can't talk about it publicly until after school starts.
Yeah,
No, I agree.
Eric has.
Representative Goulet.
I'm just speaking out of maybe personal interest on this because I did set my own vacation schedule based on the, what we approved. So I wouldn't be able to make that meeting in August. What we could do is kind of a compromise. I think shifting it makes sense for next year because it just is, I think for all the reasons it's been stated, it makes more sense to be able to be here in August. The option to maybe kind of split the difference on it would be to do a roundtable in August to hear from people about how school opening is going. We don't necessarily need to, since all the education agencies are kind of on sleep mode at that point and getting ready for like the start of school, they're not proposing standards that we'd be voting on. So there probably wouldn't be a vote on anything. But what we could do is have our regular July meeting because there still will be work getting done with council and with the agencies in July that we might actually have to formally vote on in July. But in August, really what we're looking for is more of a listening session to hear from our constituents and the public how the opening of school is going. So we could still do that, and then we wouldn't have to worry about missing a formal vote on anything. But we could have a roundtable where we hear from folks, and that would maybe be the best of both worlds. We could pick up the vote in July, and then we could hear the concerns in August from people with the roundtable. So that's just my thoughts, and we would need to change the schedule.
I appreciate that, Representative Goulet. Representative Williams, would you like to have more
I think
discussion?
it's sensible what you're saying. I just disagree because last year, if you look at the agenda meeting, there were 4 people that signed up in July. So I don't see the purpose of having a July meeting. I think people, so I would entertain just putting it to a vote at the public meeting about moving it to August, and it's nothing intentional, it's not having you be included, Representative Goulet, but I just think it would be more effective for the public.
Could I piggyback on that? Because I agree with what you're saying about the public involvement in July being lower. What I'm saying is though, the voting aspect of like things we're actually voting to approve versus hearing public testimony. We may need that in July anyways, because there still could be things coming down, based on council doesn't go into recess until July 15th. And, there's a lot of activity up until that point. I'm thinking we may have something we want to vote on in July, particularly since we have both the health and the math standards that we want to think about. And then I think there will be a flood of people wanting to come talk about the opening of school, but I think a roundtable gets the same goal. It's a way where the public can come speak freely, but then we don't have to worry about having to vote on any matters in August. So if there's a way to bifurcate the two, I'd like to see that this year at least, and then maybe next year we just plan in advance so we don't create schedule conflicts.
So hearing the discussion, is there any more discussion on the possible movements? Representative O'Leary?
I think we might think about our next, business meeting, to have it on the agenda or a business meeting at the beginning of June, talk about this change.
Are you suggesting that we don't discuss it till then, or are we taking some type of motion to have it on the agenda because of that? From what, Representative, Director Butler was saying, if whatever discussion has to be voted on in a public meeting, because it was approved in a public meeting. So even to entertain it, we have to have that discussion in a public meeting. So from what I'm hearing, if I can clarify this for everybody, even to discuss the motion to entertain it, it would have to happen in a public meeting. So we can recommend right now to just have that discussion, to move the July meeting to August, but it has to happen. It has to be on the agenda for our public meeting in May in 2 weeks.
That doesn't sound.
Yeah, so in the new bylaws, the things that you can vote on in the working session, this body right now here today can vote on a motion to add a vote on the revised 2024 school schedule.
Sorry.
So you all can vote, yes, we want to add this to the public meeting agenda, and then it will be on the agenda, and you all can make whatever discussions or decisions about the schedule. But there should be a vote to put it on the agenda that happens at this time, and then that will be on the public meeting agenda for many people to discuss, and then revise the schedule, then vote on the final schedule at the meeting.
So Representative O'Leary's point though, is it too? I don't necessarily feel the need to do that now unless, like, is it too late to do it in June? Like if we did at the June working meeting, if we voted to put it on the agenda and voted in June, that would still be okay, right?
No, that's still fine.
Yeah, let's go.
So we don't have to make a decision on this, right?
So we don't have to, you're not gonna make a motion, so I'm gonna take that first and foremost.
Yes.
And then I wanna return back to, we had a subject that was going to be discussed or when we do have a meeting, the next meeting, which is health. I would like to entertain a vote on that, or whenever we do have a meeting, that it be on health, whether that meeting happens in July or August. I would like to entertain a vote on that, if we call a roll call, that would be the subject matter that we would have when that meeting is held. Can we do that? Madam Director?
Yes.
Okay, can we call a roll that we have on the table that health will be discussed in the meeting following May? June, right?
Yes,
Okay, so
so whenever that meeting is.
whenever that meeting is, the subject will be. Okay, so can we get a roll call?
You'll come back from moving into your dorm.
We can pretty much guess which hall you're on.
Okay. Representative Kelly, this is the vote to have the public meeting panel after the main meeting on the topic of student health.
That's correct.
Yes.
Representative Moore,
Yes.
Representative Washington. Representative Best,
Yes.
Representative Chang.
Yes.
Just because.
Representative Elect,
Yes.
Representative Kemp,
Yes.
Representative O'Leary.
Yes.
Representative Brady,
Yes.
Representative Williams,
Yes.
Representative Patterson.
Yes.
This unanimous vote that the panel topic after the main panel will be on student health.
I so appreciate everyone, after much discussion, getting to that agreement. Thanks, everyone, for going through that concluded discussion. That being said, next on the agenda are committee reports. Each committee chair will provide a day, which will be followed by questions if there are any. And we can start with the one that I get to chair. I'm thankful for that, and that is the admin committee meeting. The notes are in your folders, if you guys would like to see in earnest, what it was, but I will give you the highlights. Our meeting date was April 26th, and we met from 3 to 3:30, basically, PM. Members in attendance was myself, our president, Ebony Rose Thompson, Representative of Ward 2, Allison Chang, Jen, Ms. Kimberly, our new ombudsman, and Tony Kreiner as well. Our student advocate was not here. He was on a much well-deserved vacation at this time. The highlights is this meeting focused on welcoming our new ombudsman for education, Kimberly Humphrey, and sharing office updates and how that's going. She was basically in her first week, so we got to welcome her, and we also talked to us a lot about. We debriefed on the agency's 2025 budget testimonies and discussed the strategy for securing a human resource FTE for the state board. So we heard earlier a little bit that our chairman at the council is entertaining some of our inquiries and our advocacy, so we'll continue to do that. The officers provided the following updates. Well, OMB working to hire a program assistant for the SPED hub, and parents are still having trouble with this stuff.
With the reimbursement system.
With the reimbursement system. Thank you. Okay, I appreciate that part.
Yeah, where they reimburse parents, you have to transport them.
Right, so that's a very cumbersome thing. It's not that they don't do it, but getting reimbursements flags a lot. And for families who need the money, need to be reimbursed when they have to do that, we're trying to make sure that we expedite that process. For the State Board of Education, the Public Information Officer starts June 3rd, 2024, so we look forward to that. State Board members have 20K, not 20K, 60K available for a board project that must be encumbered, as it says, encumbered, by the first week in July. So can you give me a little bit more?
Yes, so when you all did work plans last fall with your committees, you laid out a list of things you wanted to do. There were research projects, there were surveys, and your staff members worked with you to get a budget for those. And so we set aside money in the agency budget for those things. And in order to procure them, some of them require FRPs and to put out to the market to be able to get over a certain dollar amount. Those things have to be put into the procurement system so that we can then procure them and wrap them up before September 3rd. So it's $60,000 for all of them. So what you should be working with your staff members now in your work plan to see what are the things you want to do. So I think they've met with all the chairs and start to work on committee work plan about what you want to procure for your committee work, whether it's a report, survey, whatever the different options are.
Threshold for. You said if it's more than a certain amount.
I think if it's more than 5,000,
It depends on whether it's a good or a service.
yeah, like goods and services have different like threshold. So like if it is a good, I think there's things that we can purchase on the P card. But normally the committees don't have goods that they want to purchase a survey or like a focus groups, those things cost money, to or get a report done.
What has to be done before, what has to be covered, like a contract or
The bid and everything needs to be in the system by the first week of July. Because we're normally having those things take 5 to 8 weeks, and if we wait till August.
But the service can be done in August, we just need to.
Yes, because that's why we need to put the work into the system by the first week of July. Because what happens if you wait till August and then they complete the work the first week of October, it comes out of next year's budget.
Would you remind us what we have spent that money on in previous years?
In previous years, so like there was a teacher retention, I think the stuff done with Mary Levy was one of some of the research projects. The focus group for the governance report, to like the money for those, I think they provided lunch for the people who came to like the focus group. Well, community, not for us, it's a whole, but it's like, it was a part of the hosting of the focus group. So like, they provide refreshments and those things. But yeah, the teacher retention work and reports that we've done are all included, or like if we procure something like the health school facility work, we had someone do that report that was in procurement. That we had to put out, even though that was grant fund, but that's the type of thing, like someone independently did research work with the committee and then put forth set of recommendations that then stay for things published. So there are varying, but it really all depends on the projects and the work that you all will be laying out in your committees.
Were there any projects funded through the committees for last year?
No. We all do not put anything through the procurement process.
This is all fresh ideas and you've got a month to do
No.
Basically,
it? Okay.
because it gotta be by that first.
And if
Yeah.
you decide not to do that,
July.
we'll find ways to spend that money, but we want to just let you all know that that money has been set aside.
Right, we will leave no money on the table, just so you guys understand that.
The money goes back into the news.
Yeah, so like we try to use all the funds.
Right.
Again,
I'm
increase
a
state
part-
board salary.
Yeah, I'm a former military
Cannot
member.
go to member
We did
salary.
not go into a fiscal year where we left money on the table, so.
Yeah,
we'll
but
make
I'll
sure.
about either.
Yeah.
Right,
And so,
and I also, I believe, Director Butler, is that each member has
yes, that is.
$1,000.
Yep, we're gonna get into that under new business, but yeah, so like there's a set of constituent engagement funds. That no one has used as of yet. And they have the same type of, I mean, probably a little bit lesser of a procurement, because it's only $1,000. And those things can be purchased with the P card, so you have until August to make those. But those are your constituent engagement funds that each member needs to expend.
Right.
And the process is laid out in the SOPs that you all voted on earlier this year about how to use those funds. But we will go over them a little bit, so example uses and things like that during the business.
Thank you so much. Were there any other questions regarding the admin committee's, committee report? There being none, I will go to our next committee, which is college careers and life readiness. Ward 5 Representative Henderson.
Thank you. So we met on April 26th with all members in attendance, as well as Kathleen Cochran and Jennifer Jonas. We were talking about three main areas of work. One, we're gonna look into high school graduation requirements in conjunction with the work that OSSI is doing around graduate profiles. And we've decided as a first step, we're just gonna try to get a handle on what the current requirements are and sort of why they're required, whether they're by local legislation or just through OSSI. And we also talked about continuing work on structured literacy, and for the most part, talked about advocacy around the current budget, trying to get more of the task force recommendations funded in this budget. And then we had three resolutions that we were discussing. One from Representative Best about a statewide strategy on math. We are going to continue working on that a little later down the road. We also talked about Representative Best's resolution on establishing an AI task force. And so he will be working with Kathleen to revise that in the coming days, and we should have something that we can share with the wider board for input soon. And similarly with Representative Patterson's proposed resolution on improving dual enrollment opportunities, we'll revise that and fill that out before sharing with the wider board to get additional feedback.
Were there questions for Representative Henderson?
Not a question, just Representative Best, I already know of a good amount of teachers who are interested in being a part of the task force. So as things get going, like you know, I can kind of plug in some people and want to be able to send that to other teachers across the LEA.
And in regards
For
to,
some more context of the AI resolution, I think the committee decided that they would like to split it in two. So this initial resolution that you have sort of an outline of in your materials is more about the statement of commitment and priorities around AI in education in DC. And then the committee and Representative Best are going to work to kind of iron out some of the details on who to collaborate with and all of these other questions around actualizing this idea of the task force, and that resolution will come later. And so that's why you don't have a fully relative resolution, because we made that decision on Friday afternoon. So we're gonna meet tomorrow to flesh that out and share
the idea is to engage with some more of the agency stakeholders as we kind of narrow in on who would do what in regards to the AI test.
And want to make sure that we, on the dual enrollment, I believe that like we were just saying that for the most part, it was pretty good from what we had, but that we needed to have an ask, so to speak.
Yeah, so there was, comments that you can see in the SharePoint version and are in here as well. Around making some of the asks more specific, so we can, meet with you to go through those, but just making sure that, you know, especially when it's outside agencies or bodies with the mayor or council, whoever that we're asking to do something, that we'll have something specific you can give them, so it's not like, let's improve dual enrollment, it's like, what do we want you to do in order to make that better for students? So we can.
But would we, I just want to be, for the listening public, will that be voted on in our public meeting?
So the committee moved to recommended being voted on pending those changes.
Right. Okay, I just want that for clarification.
Well, yeah, because that's what I was gonna say, it would be helpful to have on the committee report, these things reported out of it to be at, like, that's what's not clear to me also.
So and that's why I want to ask the question. So I believe that one was voted out of committee pending an ask.
We can add those to future committee reports,
Okay.
those actions.
So just on that, so there are two resolutions coming out of the committee. The one on dual enrollment and then a revised AI priority resolution. Those both will be, have been voted out of committee pending the incorporation of changes suggested by the committee to be placed on the main public meeting agenda.
That's correct. Other questions? Report? Thank you, Representative Henderson. We will now move to educator excellence with Workforce Representative O'Leary.
We haven't met yet, we're gonna meet this month. That's my role.
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate that. We will next move to student experience and engagement with Representative Williams.
Yeah, so we met on the 23rd. Darren, thanks for all your work helping us get set up and organized. We essentially brainstormed a variety of different topics that we want to explore. And we're able to narrow them down to two. So the two issues that the committee chose to focus on were chronic absenteeism and also school safety. Jen also updated the committee that we're in the process of kind of creating a crosswalk for some of the bills that are coming out of council right now with regards to chronic attendance issues. And we had set some like small goals, if you look on the end of the second page, on what we see as potential action items in each of the areas. But with a lot of like data gathering to be clear on where things stand on schools across the city, because there's just so much disparity. And then Darren and I also attended the Everyday Counts Task Force meeting. And at that meeting, I wouldn't say there was anything so definitive that came out of it, but they are still planning on making recommendations that are supposed to be more school specific rather than looking at it from like an agency level coming out in June. But one really productive thing that came from the meeting was that the new director of Safe Passage was there. And we invited her to come to our upcoming committee meeting now that Safe Passage fully lives under the office of Deputy Mayor of Safety and
Public safety
Justice.
and justice.
Exactly. So she's kind of coming because there's a lot that she's doing to be responsive to the public, training, facilitating relationships, just summer initiatives with a lot of summer school stuff, and wanted to kind of get some ideas. There's also a lot more data gathering. Now that's kind of in one place, and she is like the sole point person. I'm more encouraged about getting more information about how certain things are doing. So she's coming to our meeting, and if others want to come, that meeting date is already set. So it's May 28th, which is the Tuesday at 4 p.m.
Thank you. Any questions on the committee report? Seeing none, I will move to the advocacy committee. Advisory committee.
So our last meeting was April 8th. We had a presentation of the DC policy center to discuss and vote on two resolutions. Before that, policy that address absenteeism and truancy. And we heard as our state board has not been supported by well-being of social cultural students. Both resolutions pass the SBOE and the city, and the SBOE. And this is that we can also in school focus around relationship building between students and adults. And that include additional focus on strengthening content in schools and activities, broadening the collections and instead of race, gender inflation, and we also finalized a proposal for a roundtable forum that try and discuss the performance of policy, performance and safety and gender for our three issues that we discussed. And then our next meeting will be in 2 weeks, on Monday, the 13th, and we will celebrate our graduating 600th.
Thank you so much, Representative Washington. Are there questions on their report?
How was the attendance for the year?
Is there a reason why you think that, although we appoint nearly 40, that only you have a core group of 10 that are there? Transportation, and that's what I wanted to get to. Okay. You can discuss that more, because that's a difficult thing. Private precedent. I appreciate that.
Is there anything we can do about that?
That's what I'm saying.
You know what I'm saying? I'm just trying to.
Is there any way actually we can spend part of the funds?
So, for the last several months, we've been working with the attorney general to actually see if we can pay for Uber for students. They have told us that is not a viable cost. So literally, from us, we're going back and forth from meetings with the attorney general.
Specifically Uber, just any taxi service?
Anything. I mean, it's just right, it's been right here, but because they had, we're looking at what options. When a pilot it with the student reps to see if that can go first, or we could even get approval from the accounting, from the procurement people and OAG's office, because that is not something we give our government credit card for, but that would be something we like go into a contract or something for with them. To have them put in the code and like the back end to stay for it's like both ability to like DC government, and we just having a hard time putting that free. So but we have been working at Representative President Thompson brought that back in January. And so we have been trying to work with them to get it approved. The OTP people were on board, but then it did not pass legal. So here, yes, to see what other options exist.
Representative Kelly, did you have comments at all?
Oh, I was just talking with Joey. I was
You have
just,
to speak up a little bit louder.
I was talking with Joey. I was just saying that, I don't think a Uber is really necessary. We would have like transportation such as the metro and stuff. So nothing big. So,
And I'm sorry, these flags is close to.
Yeah, we're just right on. We need you. There's no issues.
You guys don't rotate.
It's always been.
Okay.
So the 40 people that at the first meeting, how many?
Yeah.
Okay,
They, all of them showed up in the beginning, they just waiting as meeting.
so how did they get here? Okay, because this is, it may not be transportation.
Maybe it was a sort of. Around a lot.
Change it from what time?
We changed it from 5, first it was 5:30, we changed it to 5, it was so contribution to yours. So, and since it's so early, because I have an issue with that, because I know a lot of people that make this is going to come. I know, I feel like communication might also be a key, because you don't have like budget recap emails like that.
It's hard.
And,
Parent support is.
well, I think also when it's like government employees like to send things via email. And I feel like the young people don't necessarily like to receive things via email. They are more text. And so it's like trying to, we've explored like software that's like, it takes all of them. Like, just because like they communicate differently, so we have to shift.
I'm real big, before we go to representative to the board.
I think another issue with attendance is that like over the course of the year, since
Speak up just a little bit.
yeah, since it starts like the meeting starts so early in the year, as the year goes on, students tend to like generate conflicts. I know that at least for me, like things that I've started like joining like clubs or after school, like different extracurriculars have conflicted with the Monday like schedule, which has made it makes it harder. And I know it's the same for a lot of other students. And then another thing is that I know a lot of students who missed like the application deadline and then they wanted to join, but then they weren't able to join. It's like, it was like a month after the application deadline started or happened. And I think me and Taya reached out and we weren't able to get them to like be able to apply or join, but I think that would help with like attendance if students were able to join like later.
Last year, we don't have. Last year, they I actually, we had a lot of.
Kelly.
To add on to what Joey said, like maybe there should be a fall and spring like application deadline. Like, well, applications, so like maybe in the fall you can accept a certain amount of people, then in the spring reopen it and then also promote it a little bit more, like maybe through schools or social media, just a little bit better so people can actually know about it. Because for me, I've had to find out through a friend who did it in the past, but everyone would have like someone, maybe a rep or someone at their school, so just to get more information.
All taken into account, I believe duly noted. Okay.
It was a Zoom call.
That doesn't create capacity. They're not.
I'm saying that because I don't know if you all have the same problem that I have with your ANC meetings, but a couple of my ANCs are live and the other ones are Zoom calls. And Zoom calls got a whole bunch of people at Zoom calls. I've been to one ANC meeting where I was the only person at the meeting.
I think the tentative kills those students. They're not coming, they're not coming to anything on. Pretty much that killed it for them wanting to use that vehicle.
I just also don't want to solve that. It's not just a technical problem, right? I think students also, if your voice at the meetings is not reflected in policies that we pass, and you don't see the connection, it's not super inspiring to go. We need to do a better job also at like making sure that what you guys talked about is reflected in what we.
Should that be part of the application too?
And that's why we should do student health.
We digress. Just a second. But any other discussion before we close? I appreciate the lively discussion of Washington and the input from our other student representatives. That being said, we will move to are there any external committee reports we want to share now? We will discuss new external committee appointments during new business, but is there any external reports that want to be provided at this particular time on an external committee that someone is on? And I see Kathleen and go up first on staff.
President Thompson and I attended the Environmental Literacy Advisory Committee meeting on Monday. And we have been discussing outreach around the new initiatives that different agencies are doing. for the new environmental literacy plan. And we also did an update on the status of the plan, because it previously had been said, you know, OSCE wrote it and then sent it to the DME, and they have since gotten it back from the DME with feedback. And the next step is to go to the mayor and the council for it to be public. So that is almost finished. And then we will just continue working on those action items going forward.
Thank you so much. Any other external committee reports? Thank you. With that being said, we will move to new business and other discussions. We will now move, we want to ask members if there are any additional items of new business to add to the following list. We'll be discussing the 2024-25 SAC and student representative applications, constituent engagement fund, discussion on ending legacy admissions, SR 24-11, supporting the adoption of the District of Columbia Social Emotional Learning Standards, SR 24-14, establishing the Education as a Civil Rights Working Group, where we talked about that, and SR 24-15, appointing representatives to external committees. So with that being said, we'll start with.
So are there any other items to add?
Are there any other items to add?
Discuss teacher students physical resources that are available to them. We want it to be panel style, or we want the audience to ask questions.
I believe you better. Correct, well. So with that being said, now add, okay. We'll start with, the 2024-25 SAC student and representative application. Director Butler will be leading that discussion.
So I'm so glad you all dug in around the SAC application, because now this is when we plan to talk about it, so it is all very timely. And so we have been thinking around what the timeline is and what it looks like. So traditionally, I said traditionally, in the past, this is essentially the timeline. It opens on May 15th, it closes on June 15th. Over the summer, members score student application, and they receive the scoring in the rubric. They submit their scores by a certain point, tallies, and then you notify student reps. And essentially, you have the 4 slides with you. But this is the tentative schedule. I think what has been helpful in the conversation you just had, these needs to be modified. So I think, because this is not final, this is what we're projecting. We would love your feedback, because and the slides after this, we'll talk about how we do the work. So this is just the tentative schedule. But if you all are, what I've heard a few moments ago, are saying that now there needs to be 2 application periods. And maybe the main piece, the pieces that get scored are the student advisory members who also want to be reps. So maybe you keep this summer one for people who would like to be considered for the 4 reps. And then maybe there's a fall opening just for SAC members separately who do not want to be reps. So, because that does not involve scoring by the, in the past, we have not cut off people who want to be part of the SAC. Who want to be considered for student rep. So I do think that that is probably something we could do, is have a fall application after it starts for students who just want to join the SAC, be active. They keep this particular application. Again, if they are ready to apply for the SAC, then it's great. The way the application is set up, you apply for the SAC, and if you want to be considered for a student rep position, you check another box. Then that opens up additional questions that pertain to the student rep role. Any questions, concerns, changes? Again, we want to explain this to you before the application period opens to get that feedback and change. But now that you all want to add a second application period post the start of school, we should add that to the representative. Understand?
I have a question for the students and maybe Representative Kelly, especially you talking about getting the word out and mentioned social media. like especially during this period, like who are students following on social media like, are you following like your official school account or? Like,
Okay, so for me, my school, we don't have like a official school account.
okay,
Maybe like a lot of people follow the DCPS school account, so maybe that's one where they can be promoted. And also us, the student reps, we can promote it to everyone that follows us.
I like it.
I know you can also follow Austin, so might be helpful if you can take them to.
Someone from the gate also was interested in SAC and sharing that out with the parents themselves. So in the parents.
Yes, so that is detailed out on the next slide. Is there anything like the timeline? Yes, like, we are having we will have that discussion too. But I don't want us to move here because part of the summer piece directly impacts members of the state. Like you all would have to read this for the application. And so I want to make sure, because if we can get it out to all the students, if you all don't support the applications, does this timeline work, does this schedule work? Representative Williams said.
Sorry, take the body of the application, not reading.
And those were not all of the applications, those were only the people that wanted to be considered for student rep.
That was a lot.
And so,
I did.
and so, all were expanding, who I think that is great, we need to expand opportunities. But, there's no but, and as a part of that process, you all have traditionally scored those applications. So right now, we're saying the application will close June 15th for this first round. There'll be a second round for people who are just interested in the SAC in the fall. But this first round includes those who want to be considered for the student representative position.
Shouldn't it be the other way? Seems to me that the more people who get involved in wanting to be on the SAC, we should have them first. Then the ones that want to run for as a student reps, they would come from that big group, right?
Well, they will be in their first applicant pool of people, but the reason is we are planning a specific type of onboarding that hasn't been done for student reps in the past. And we're planning for those to take place early August, right before school starts. But it's harder to do that once school starts back. Because students are already pulled in the direction. So we can get them 1 or 2 weeks before the school starts. It's easy to get them on board and then they can help plan like that first meeting with all the SAC and get them more committed to their roles in the process.
But if the SAC closes on the 18th of June,
The initial application.
everybody applies to be on the SAC.
Yes, and if you also like to
They
be
check a box.
they can be considered for student rep.
Okay.
I was gonna say, you're definitely gonna gain like a high interest of students, like if they like apply like in the beginning of the school year, because everyone like me, like is trying to scout for like little clubs and activities to join, so you would definitely get like a higher interest and higher volume of applicants. If you did like the second round with maybe like SAC being later, like in August or something like that. I'm supposed to do it earlier. Something to think about.
Are you saying that move the first initial application phase to August?
Maybe, yeah, maybe you could, like, if you wanna, like.
Yeah, higher
Yeah.
volume. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, wouldn't most students get access to it from their schools? Yeah. So like, you get the high interest people who are aware and proactive, but, you know, read like eager, but you're not gonna get someone who's like generally interested but doesn't, you know, have a teacher or administrator or friend.
Yeah.
I'm saying for the point.
I was really wrong, like, I think that's kind of like, well, I would say it's very good. Push the information out for college counselors, that's how I like learn about.
I still get understand on the time. So I'll be saying. What is I hear the representative, Kelly's suggestion, her suggestion is to shift the entire timeline. To do the first round, do the rounds to reps to August, and then to do a second later recruitment. Is that correct, or am I hearing that wrong? Yeah. Okay. Instead of this timeline. So is there any other feedback on that, or we should, if there's a whole other side about getting the word out, different roles that members will play, staff will play, who we're gonna be reaching out to, that kind of thing.
And we have to have the student rep by September.
That's why we kept it this way, so that we can onboard those 4 student reps before school starts, if they can come to that first working session in September. And then we can also work with them to do the swearing in. There's a lot of back and forth, like trying to get to the school. And so maybe we're trying to figure out, is there another way to be swearing in? So like we have a swearing in ceremony at the very beginning of that September working session for all 4 student reps. So again, we've been just really thinking about ways to kind of, it's sometimes hard to get to school, to get the students scheduled, the principals, to get the people there. Where it's easier if maybe they all showed up to the very first working session, the very first thing on our agenda was the swearing members for the student rep members at that September meeting.
As we have that orientation.
Yeah, so we've had time to do orientation with them, and so they can kick off the first SAC. But we, again, if that doesn't work, we are very flexible to shit. Like, we've just been thinking a lot about the timelines and how we build missed opportunities this past year, to build up some of that foundation in the beginning. And I feel like the SSC is kind of just now getting cooking. And if this cooking could have happened like 3 months ago, like there could have been a round table this month, like that kind of thing. But they like, and so we want to give them as much time as possible to do as much work as possible throughout the year to have a larger impact. So the thing that we wanted to talk about is, I do agree, getting the word out is paramount. I see that Darren has been taking notes on like some suggestions from you all, some counselors and other people. But we also wanted to get the members involved, particularly because what we do know is that you all will be potentially looking at schools and at schools during the summer, during the tours, connecting with administrators, so being able to share information that way. And what we wanted to do is really to do, we can publicly announce via social media. We would definitely be sending out stuff to all of our partners and Edge Cluster folks to include on all their listservs, and we could do a more targeted outreach to those folks to ask them to like do specific social media posts, whether it's DCPS or OSCE. In the past, we've just asked them to share it, but we can be very specific about like the how and when, like, can we agree to like this social media schedule and those kinds of things. And as a part of, and I mentioned in my report, this social media and visual media campaign that we do every year with back to schools, with some of the stuff that we're looking to do to advertise, like what are the funds that we can use to model, like just different ways that we can get the word out. Advertisement, is there like a QR code that we can have on our model advertising for students to look up the application, because we wanted to reach as many people as possible. So we have been thinking about different venues and avenues to reach more students. But like we want to have stuff ready when we got to the May 13th, so that if there are flyers that all of our student reps can take to their schools, especially if all of our seniors are going to be there to get their stove, take this back to your counselor at your school so that they know we're recruiting like 2 days from now. So like we've been trying to honestly think about how we come up with support and more engagement, and to be in positions to be successful early on. Any questions or feedback about that? Because I know Darren is one of our lead people on that, so he'll be taking copious notes of all of your suggestions. And so there's just more to come. We'll talk about in June is the rubric that was used to vote on students that you all will be filling out, and we'll walk you all through that. But at that time too, we'll be able to provide you like this, how many applications we have so far, that type of thing. Because we want to start again, we want to start planning now. I think last year we just got off to a much later start with everything. If we had to. Are there any questions, concerns? Thank you all for your feedback. We're going to incorporate as much as humanly possible. Because you all are the closest to, student reps are the closest to, me directly. Next, I think is me too.
Yes, constituent engagement funds.
Yes,
Director
so
Butler.
constituent engagement funds. Each member has $1,000 for constituent engagement efforts. For example, you're having a community meeting, and you need a translator on site. We can hire that person for you, to pay that out of your constituent engagement funds. You are having a meeting and you need to rent space for something. You can help, as long as it's not a DC government agency, you can possibly help cover the cost for that, because that's something that can be done on a P card. Or you need a particular Zoom subscription for a virtual meeting you're having, or a workshop that you want to do in your board. You can help cover the cost of like those type of things. You have a monthly newsletter that is not MailChimp, because MailChimp does not allow you to have an annual subscription, but another type of newsletter that does have an annual subscription, you can pay for that, something that you send out to your constituents on a monthly basis. So if there's an annual option, that is something you can use, but that goes to directly towards engaging your constituents in your ward. What you cannot use it for, but I think it's really precious, because anything that could possibly be connected to your election, like so, your name, picture, face, likeness. The state board has like state board swag. So if you're having an event and you want state board swag at your event, we can put together some boxes of stuff for you to take and put out, but those are generic state board things that we already have. If it is for a community event, we can put in a food waiver to purchase that for you. Now, that is up to the Office of Contract and Procurement, whether or not they approve it. They have very strict guidelines. They require you to have exact, like very close to exact count, number of people, and then an agenda for setting it to the event. But then we have to submit it, and it has to go through legal review, and their attorney reviews it, our attorney reviews it, and then if it's approved, then we can purchase that also. But we just have to put in a waiver for that. Yes.
I don't want to interrupt your flow. I eventually have a question, but.
No, that was the only thing I had about the food waiver.
Questions?
So my idea for this, thinking through it, what about creating a website, but since I don't have the website skills to design it myself, that I would hire somebody using this to create it. There would be links on there to get to, because like people will have frequent questions about where do I go to get this service or something like that. Where do I go to do this? Like trying to create some portal, particularly for Ward 3, schools would go for those services. The concern I would have is what you just raised, though, is does that directly link to like the member? Like
Well, it's not, so like having
With the
something for
re-election.
Ward 3 families around education aside is
just don't plaster your
fine.
face all over.
but like that site cannot also say vote for Eric Boulay Ward 3 representative. Does that make sense?
Makes absolute sense. I just
Yes,
wanted to be
those things
clear that
have
would be
to-
okay. Because I was envisioning.
And so like if paying for something like that, there are several options. So if there, I don't know, you buy website software that has you like kind of like in a can kind of thing. So like that is something that can be purchased on a P card. What you are able to do is buy services. So for example, if someone is charging you money to pay to create that website for your constituent, we can support that, knowing that our limit to pay on your behalf is up to $1,000.
This isn't gonna be fancy. And if
No, it's
I
fine,
think
but if
students
you
know,
go beyond
everybody
that, then it's like,
can set
won't
one
be
up.
able to go beyond that. And if there is someone who is doing work on your behalf, that relates to constituent services, even if it's an individual that's doing events with you in the city, you could possibly pay them, but then they would have to have a business license. Again, people that we could pay and have a receipt and all those kinds of
You guys also take care of the 99 every day.
things. Because we don't do P card purchases. 1099 would be a separate process for the things that are, they work with us. So like our student reps get a stipend, they do a 1099 for that, but yeah. Any other questions? Darren? We've done it.
Under that follow up on the budget. So it's in her to How, if it takes a while to make like a website or something, it still has to be paid by September.
Yeah, so like these are all things that have to be procured, done by September 30th.
What's our deadline for counting?
Then starts over.
So there's a new budget October 1 for the entire agency, so this money just gets pushed back to the executive. All money that is not to the budget. And if you're looking to procure something, again, the sooner the better. Like, by the beginning of August, it's your date.
It takes time to get a vendor, to get on it, so it's
Yeah.
like a web design.
Yeah, that was very well.
Thank you for the discussion. Now we'll have a discussion on the legacy missions. Representative Ward 3, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, it's all of us know, June of 23, the Supreme Court basically ended race-conscious affirmative action with the Harvard and UNC case that they ruled on. That there was really powerful testimony at the public meeting regarding why we need to take the lead in terms of creating a policy in the city to end legacy admissions or legacy preferences, depending on how you phrase it. I mean, the reasons are really clear, is that, you know, when you look at the data on this, you know, people who are established in the universities are more white, they're more affluent. It really just creates a birthright advantage for people who frankly shouldn't need it. We should have a leveling of the playing field. We should get rid of this preference here in the city. It will expand the diversity at our universities. And it just frankly is fair and makes sense, particularly in light of the Supreme Court ruling. I think we need to take action on this. So what we've circulated is that there's a draft of a bill that council may be introducing soon. I think what we should do is do our own resolution on this, though, that kind of outlines many of the same principles that will be in the bill, but that takes a stand that we support ending legacy admission preferences. The council would ultimately have to vote on legislation to do this. So we'll keep a close eye on that. But I think if we take the lead on this, then we can really kind of set the stage and give them an opening to move legislation forward. So I'm excited to see where this goes. Director Butler, do you know where this would go? What committee yet it would go to? So what's the next step for it? It would go then be because we've got the draft of the bill, staff turns it into a resolution, it goes to committee. Which committee would we be sending this to? Where's that?
I would double check with Jen. But I think this would go to any legacy admissions. I don't know if this is to the engagement or the career life readiness.
Do we even have to vote to take it up first?
Well, yeah, too, just like. If
it gets.
Yeah, because there's no draft of resolution or anything like that, but, the first thing would be a vote to decide whether or not the board wants to take this up and be assigned to a committee at that point.
So we vote on the taking up the issue here and then it's assigned to
Yeah,
the committee. Okay.
Like referred to me, but it was on the, I think, to discuss this with everyone today.
And we have something that's pretty far along in terms of a bill that was drafted by many of the same advocates who testified at the hearing. What we would simply be doing is having our staff convert the legislation into a resolution for the committee to consider. And the committee would then do a committee mark of what the board would consider. And I think that would then come back to us from the committee, you know, and I'd be fine with it coming back at a working session for us to review the committee draft. That works for everybody, because the devil's gonna be in the details here. And, but I think the principle of this is something everybody probably supports and can agree with.
My suggestion for, when President Thompson is up referring it would likely be college, career life readiness, just because that committee is the one that does primarily a lot of the interagency, work. I mean, when you think about the general topics under each committee, I don't necessarily think this falls under either, so.
It's not in the board's group.
Yeah, so, given the choice, that would be my suggestion, college career like readiness.
And I want to be, again, be specific about it. When we're talking about interlegacy, we're talking about particular colleges, because I know there are HBCUs that have legacy.
Yeah, we'd specifically be looking at here in the District of Columbia, so we're not looking, we're we're limiting this effort to DC, but I think it should be everywhere, to be honest. I don't think legacy preferences should be available anywhere. I think it should be, you shouldn't get a preference based on your birthright. To be, I mean, I think that's clear. I think statistically, I mean, this advantages students who are white, students who are affluent, particularly at the universities here in DC. So, but I wouldn't think that we would want this to provide a preference to any student, just simply who their parents are. I'm open to discussions of pros and cons, but it's an angle I hadn't thought of, but it is something that I think really should be eliminated across the board.
And I know we're talking about just students come up here, but as I look at and congratulate Representative Kelly, I know Spelman, as a person who's had a daughter that goes to Spelman, they have a legacy. And, you know, that would be extended, you know, on down to other family members and stuff like that. So, you know, as we talk about this, I know we talk mostly about Ivy Leagues and things like that, you know, those schools, but it does have more reaching and nuances for those first-time college people who are going to HBCUs. They've gotten there, and now all of a sudden, you know, they may not get that next sibling member for lack of preference just because they aren't there at the web. So just making that to be known as part of the discussion. Representative Reed.
So my first hunch is, I know there's advocacy around it, by a group, particularly related to Georgetown. My first impression is I don't believe this was in the State Board of Education's purview to take up. And we're rather as dedicate time to things that are within our purview, like, I guess, math. I'm not letting it go. I'm just playing though. Just kidding. I'm kidding about that one. But I recently started teaching a course at Georgetown, Education, Equity, and Justice in the last fall. And this came up for sure, and was also invited to speak for Martin Luther King Day related to the Supreme Court's rollback. And it was interesting because it was mostly African American students present. And they were like, because of the rollback of affirmative action, they're like, what do we have if we don't have this? So I wanted to raise that. I also wanted to raise institutions like Georgetown. We're built on the back of Black Georgetown.
Yeah.
So when we talk about equity, we also need to make sure that we're not just throwing the equity. We need to make sure we're being very specific about what groups are involved. So there is a particular group that is accessing this educational opportunity, and it's working for them because maybe their parents fought when the university wasn't so open to Black folks. And then now they have their students who are able to get in and have the opportunity. I would hate for us to be a part of limiting that because one group is taking advantage, or I don't know, one group is allegedly benefiting, another group is equally benefiting. So I just want to be mindful of that as a raise from students at universities who, American, Georgetown, GW students were in the room. And being mindful that, you know, sometimes certain things impact folks in a different way when you think about what costs the access for folks. So.
Yes, I'm gonna go to Henderson and I'll come to Best.
Yeah, so I haven't seen the draft bill, but when the public comments were talking about this, I asked about the 272 program at Georgetown, and they said that there was a carve out for that. So I don't know if there's additional
entire book on that.
Yeah.
Can I respond? So I just looked this up. They've got there is an exception. It's not included right now in the current draft of the bill. Now the council could always change it, but Howard's not included. Any HBCU admissions are not included right now. So the focus is, you know, on the legacy admissions at the other universities.
I think we need to consider a unique history of Georgetown. Or is there, I'm sorry, just a different way to get at the issue without tackling the legacy? Because there are people who are benefiting from the legacy emissions. Yeah, I'm just wondering, is it, we're looking at maybe just the college admissions process in general, or like, can we But I just hear the voice of those students on MLK Day say, my parents worked their butts off to get through various institutions in DC, and why can't I
Why
have
should I have
access?
that preference?
Yeah,
It doesn't
now
work.
that, yes, now
I
that,
get it.
yeah, so.
I get it. Representative Best.
Yeah, man, nuances, right? That's the word. So I come from a time where most of my friends, most of my Black friends are first or second generation, college students, right? And I think one of the things that came up in the conversation earlier was, man, so they want to get rid of legacy preference now that we're finally here. And so that's something that I think about, because early on I was like, oh yeah, let's do it. But when you start to dive a little deeper into the conversation, you actually, you want to figure out, are you actually helping, or are you hurting? And so just knowing that there are two sides of it. So thinking of different ways to approach it might be best.
And I appreciate all the nuances because it's not a simple thing where you just say, we want to end legacy preferences, and applications and acceptance. We want to look at the history, a lot of the other aspects of this, so that we're not doing more harm than good, I think is what we're saying here. So from what I'm understanding correctly, that this will go to a committee.
Yeah.
And there'll be more discussion about it in that committee.
Well, I think we all have to agree to take it up first.
So I believe we want to take it up. I could be wrong, but is there something we want to take up?
I don't, but we probably should vote.
Can I respond for a second, Ron?
Sure.
So, on the point about whether this is within our purview, I think we have a responsibility to comment on education issues generally here, but particularly as we look at our students who are graduating and their paths. So we're not only looking at, their time in schools here, but then what comes next for them. And by making this statement as a board, we're saying that we want our students to be able to have the best opportunities, and including students who are the first generation students who are going to college and their family.
And I think the way as the board that we come at that is making sure that DC students leave DC schools or homeschool settings or their private schools or wherever they're leaving out of DC education, prepared to compete. So in regards to are we making sure, I guess allegedly the school profile work that's coming out, the standards work that we do, heck, even some of our, accountability work. That is how you, I guess, prepare students from coming out. I worry about, yeah.
Well, can I just respond? So this is what we're voting on today. It's not to support anything specific. We're voting that this is an important issue and that it should go to a committee for further analysis. Now, the committee could have a roundtable on it. They could just choose to sit on it and do nothing if they ultimately find some of these issues to be problematic. But I think what we've seen is a national push. We've seen Maryland, Virginia take action on this with bills being introduced, that there's a concern out there that one element to try to increase diversity at schools has now been cut off. But another one that actually maintains the status quo, it has been held up so far, which is these legacy preferences. And what we're doing by sending it to committee is just saying that we want a committee to take a look at this. Ultimately, the committee, it's up to them whether they decide to move on it or not. But recognizing this is a really important issue that really deserves, I think, the scrutiny of a committee to do a deep dive on. We've got a draft of a bill to get the committee going. And then, I'm excited to work with the committee in any role I can to support this. And I mean, the issue actually probably disadvantages my ward, but I think it's important enough that we need to take it up, because I really do think the Supreme Court decision was wrong. And I think it's going to penalize students here in DC if we don't look at this. So
I appreciate all of the discussion on it. When I look at, by each of us ran it, and in our title that we're advisory, and I know there's a lot of statutes that we're taking from, but one of the biggest things that we do have is our voice. Whether it goes, where it goes from there, but it is to discuss these hard issues. So I would like to put a motion on the floor that we take a vote on if we're going to move it to a committee, so that everybody can make a decision on that if we're going to weigh in on this at this particular time. And if Director Butler could take a roll call to move it to a committee as a subject matter we want to take up.
The vote to move the topic of discussion of Indian legacy commissions to, state board committee. So we're gonna go in progress, so it's yes, you want to move forward with it, no, you don't. Representative Kelly, I was like,
Yes.
So yes, you wanna move it to. Representative Villaflor,
Yes.
Representative Washington. There you go. Representative Beck.
President.
Not an option, I guess.
You can always
So yes.
vote president. You can always vote president. Yeah, you can vote
No,
president.
you cannot, if I lost
Okay.
that option.
Okay.
Like-
Bylaws.
Oh my God.
So, yes.
Yes,
Representative Chang,
Yes.
Representative Boulay,
yes.
Representative Henderson,
No.
Representative O'Leary,
Yes.
Representative Reed,
Nope.
Representative Williams. Representative Patterson.
Yes.
There's a majority vote to move it to, committee.
You have to decide, maybe I would to,
I mean, well, I mean, the president decides which committee,
okay.
but it will be.
Thank you so much for that rich discussion. We'll now move to supporting the adoption of the District of Columbia Social Emotional Learning Standards, SEL standards. President Thompson will be discussing, but in her absence, but I think we've heard enough. I hope at this particular time, of what we know we're going to be voting on it in the next meeting. Was there any other discussions that we need to have on voting on it, supporting this adoption of it? None? Four, okay. The next one is FR 24-14, establishing the education as a civil rights working group. This is assigned to me. And I brought it up a couple of times, but I want to make this to, move it to a working meeting. I did, bring it to, have a discussion with some different members and committees and stuff. So, what this does is that we're talking about having a working group that will start to look at, education as a civil rights. I've been working with a group that is out of California. They've had one state that have passed it and actually put it in their constitution. There's a legal team, there's a lot of legal stuff that's going on around it. I would like the District of Columbia to be one of those places that guarantees, that says getting an education, quality education is a right. We do have to define what quality defines as, what are the legal ramifications of this, but I would like to establish a working group to start kind of pulling that out and vetting all the legalese and the wording around it. I do believe that education is one of those civil rights that has yet to totally be established. I know we've done a lot of things around education. I know we have Brown Board of Education, but I do feel that as a civil rights, that is one unfinished thing that we need to make sure that everyone has a right to. I don't think it still is. I think as we see in the papers and everywhere else in the media, what does that mean for a lot of people? You know, we're seeing books banned, we're seeing classes and certain things that are being banned, and I think we need to weigh in more and have people, give people some rights around what it means to get a quality education, give them something to fight back with in their constitution. So that is the reason that I'm asking that we move it to a working group so we can begin to kind of vet that out and then decide as a District of Columbia if that is something that we would like to support through a resolution, and then moving that resolution over to our legislative body that would best serve as our lawmakers, and then having that signed over. So that's with the first iteration, as it should be, at the Board of Education to, you know, decide what that resolution looks like anyway. The first work. So, questions?
Yeah, I have two questions, and maybe this comes in the very, not now, but is it, quality public education? Or quality education?
Of quality public education.
And then I'm just not sure, like, what is the analog for DC to like a state constitution?
And that's and that's to be vetted out in that particular. When I was talking to the individuals in California, we're unique because we are a federal enclave. They do feel like our council is the equivalent of a state legislature. I think they should be taken as such until they are made one in the 51st state. So it would analog to that, to them passing, and then our mayor establishing that as a law. And I'm not sure, but I think it probably would, and Representative Boulay knows a lot more than I do as far as legislative bodies, since he's worked on one so long. As far as if that would actually have to be put in like home rule, or how does that really work or anything like that? But we have a home rule charter, which serves kind of like as our constitution.
Yes.
And all that. So it would have to be better through all of that, but the analog is, like I said, aligns with our council and those type of. Yes,
When
ma'am.
you say work group, is this within the SBOE, or are you gonna do like a hybrid or external?
No, FGO, that would be us, because we're moving this resolution. And then anything that comes after that fact would be established by the council and those bodies taking it after we do the resolution. What the working group is basically gonna do is get the working around the resolution itself for us to push forward. We're really gonna vet out each word as if we're putting together a legal document. Just the best way for me to say it. So this group will be the members that are sitting around here. We would establish those members, but first we have to say that we're going to establish it. Other questions? Okay,
No, so all this, the resolution is for me to be on the work.
right.
So you would just need those names.
Yes,
I think you all voted at last month's public meeting to pick it up.
right.
And this is just to identify the people you appoint to the work group.
I'm also looking, are we looking for members to be identified right now as well?
I mean, we would just need those names before, by next Wednesday, so that we can post everything online.
So
The final versions of things on Friday.
I won't put anybody on the spot at the moment. I know there are people that are interested or also that I would like to see them just because of their experience with counsel and legal stuff. So, can we, take a vote that we will form this working group, and then I will reach out to individuals,
You already voted on that. This new business piece is just going over the resolution
okay.
to create the work. But you already voted to take it out at the last.
It's 4 members.
It can't be five, because then that's four, that's if you all are contained by state full policy.
Right. So we're voting on the half of the resolution. For what? They are. Yes. So you're showing increase. Thank you. I appreciate that. So if we could move this resolution forward, you have to follow roll.
No, this is just a discussion. We've already been moved forward at the last meeting.
I'm sorry again, I can't. Okay, so any other questions on the discussion? Thank you. I believe the last one that we had, well, we have to go out tomorrow. One as well, appointing representatives to the external committees, I believe we have a report here that.
You have a draft resolution.
Okay.
So, some of the things, and I'll go with this, unless you would like to go.
So you go.
So, thank you all for everyone who completed the survey. The one thing you will not see on here, so I would just say, I have been attending all of the community schools, committee meetings as state board representative. They have said, pause that, and like there is no money to continue to fund the people that do it. So there is no committee to appoint to. So 3 people wanted to do it, and they are no longer meeting because they don't know if they're going to be funded. So they stopped meeting. They sent out a notice a couple weeks ago saying that they would not be constituting that body together until there's a vote on the budget. So if they vote to fund that community school grant, which is through Odyssey, which is the Odyssey staff that leads it, if that money is put back in, then they will constitute. It was in the mayor's budget, it was wrote out.
No, I'm making that basis. I thought federal dollars were received for community schools at some point. So that's why I'm just making.
Federal dollars, so DCPS, they apply for money for their community school, which is called Connected Schools. Yeah. The money that OSSI gives has been from the OSSI local funds to schools to continue their effort, who are not included in the DCPS. But, and those schools still apply for federal funds, but OSSI will no longer be given local funds and funding staff to do that.
I guess my question is, DC got money from the federal government to do.
DCPS, not OSSI.
DCPS.
Yeah, so like
Okay.
that is like.
So it's
DCPS
just that LEA.
Yes.
There we go. Okay, because I was like,
You know,
what?
DCPS got a lot of federal money to do
Yeah.
schools, and they have
And they
a
have
very
cards.
thriving community school strategy,
Gotcha.
but that is DCPS,
So
that
it
is not
doesn't
OSSI.
cover.
That
Okay.
doesn't cover our charter school.
I got you.
Yeah, and OSSI has been.
I just knew federal funds came to DC and I was
Ton
like,
of federal funds,
how
but they
is
did not
this-
come to all of our,
it just came
they
to
came,
DCPS.
well, because DCPS applied for those things. So, and they got those.
And they are doing that based on the budget, because it was a discussion that I was in at an event recently.
Mhm.
Where we were talking to the deputy mayor about that, and because the funds are supposed to be tight, they're saying, okay, we're gonna stop the local funds and let the federal fund
So I
go.
still have a follow-up question about that committee though, even though it's just DCPS, why are we eliminating a vehicle to? And maybe this is a question for our agency partners, I'm not pushing back, I'm just curious, because the program is still in our city. And I would imagine people still wanna talk about it, and I would hope that maybe it's a bad budget season. But so I'm just curious if we still have the community schools initiative or whatever, why are we still having bring people to the table, talk about it?
What the point is that they use that money to bring together the folks, the grantees that OSSI was giving money to, but then to come present their results or whatever. And it wasn't, but just like.
So it wasn't like a how do we make community?
No, it wasn't, because they
That
gave
sounds like
grant
an
dollars.
opportunity.
But like that is, and so it also has FTEs tied to that. So so the FTEs are the people whose jobs would be to convene
Right.
those meetings that I've been attending.
And I
And
know.
we got funded, they
for a
also
fact.
no longer have jobs.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
Yes.
unfortunate.
So they.
So
also
it's
lost
not
that
just
money.
like the grant itself, the people connected to all that work.
Exactly.
also go away.
Exactly. So local funds are now gone, but obviously being that part, even though DCPS still has their federal funds to do their work.
Yeah.
So that's what's happening. Just so you know, so that's why we don't have that
Wow, to me
committee
that we didn't
has
apply to.
availability to be part of. But if I'm understanding this outside of that particular committee, so.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
again, if it comes back and they decide to reconvene that external committee, then look at membership to join.
No
that.
worries.
So based on that, what we have the contact on education opportunity for military children, Vice President Patterson, the District of Washington Area School Boards, Rachel O'Leary, Everyday Council Task Force. There were multiple people that applied, but we decided to keep Representative Williams because he's also the current person, so like to continue the continuity.
and he had stated that he wants to remain on that before.
Yes, like that, he was one of the people. For the National Association of State Boards of Education, there's a Government Affairs Committee. We have Representative Best and Representative Patterson. They'll allow you to have 2 slots, but you all only get 1 vote at the District of Columbia. The National Association of State Boards of Education and Public Education positions, it's called PEP Committee, at NASB. Only one person wants to do that, that was Vice President O'Leary. And then the Research Practice Partnership, Representative Pendleton indicated that he would like to continue on with that, and no one else wanted to do it either. So we continue and add him on to that.
We also need a representative on the Environmental Literacy Advisory Committee. Because the report has been submitted, the report has to be redone every 3 years and there's progress being tracked. So that committee is not sunsetting, there should still be a member.
Yeah, so any committee that's not represented here other than the community schools had 0 people volunteer for it. So we didn't want to force people. But there were others too that did not have people. And so we can resend it around. But like one of the ones that was on there, but there's no longer convened is the literacy task force. So that is a meeting.
And also, the area boards, doesn't actually convene anymore either. So that should be taken off the list as well.
Okay,
Right, I'm saying this one does still continue.
Yeah.
That's what I'm depending.
but that would be up to a member to volunteer.
And Bruce, I filled this thing out today, but you can put me wherever you want me. If there's something like, if you need me on this, I'm flexible. I don't really have a strong preference on which of these committees I said, so I think I just got it to you today, but, again, like if you need me on this one, or wherever you need me, totally.
Well, also, it's like, it's where also where you all want to be, because these committees, the ones that are active are fairly active. There was no one who volunteered on the school park and
Yeah, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, yeah, I can put you there, see? You just said you wasn't go anywhere, so there
I
are.
don't even know.
Just like the very there's a place, if you wanna be, I can put people
This
anywhere
sounds
I
like,
think they should, but that is also not fair. But we'll follow back up with people, just based on the information that we had, when the staff drafted this resolution earlier this week.
Thank you, Matt. With that being said, SAC roundtable with Representative Washington.
Student Advisory Committee, we were planning on creating hosting a student roundtable in the room that would be covered. We wanted to host a panel of like 4 or 5 students, policymakers, just stakeholders and teacher reflection, physical and mental well-being. For us. Yeah, this our top SAC issues. We wanted to plan that have it public, company hybrid. We were thinking of hosting it with one library, but we didn't get the prices, so we get hosted in about 3,000 students. Probably around the beginning of June, but we're open to suggestions.
This year?
Open to suggestions are better. Place to keep this here. Students, they are suggestions.
I think the main thing is that if you want to have an MLK library, that is possible. I don't know if cost would be an issue for the state board. So I don't want you to cross that off the list in terms of the location. Are there specific things that you would need from members?
Just support if you could, whenever we get it, so that you get marketing, actually, this post it or retweet it, let the students hear what the students are using. Just spread it.
Don't forget that the beginning of June is election day.
Or we have
So maybe not
heated
that.
races.
Well, also MLK library could be available because I think they hope. It's just, I know there are early voting sites too with the primary. So just, but they will let you know if they're ready, right?
Okay.
So anybody who is interested in acting as a panelist, it's fine.
Can you send that to everybody?
Yeah.
Looking at it. That's a read.
Whatever the students need me to do.
We appreciate all of that, so I think that is correct, I believe so. Okay, I want to thank you members, for the time and engagement tonight, okay? I think we used our time efficiently, and effectively to get to each subject matter, tonight. The next public meeting will be held on Wednesday, 2 weeks from now, May 15th, in the Old Council Chamber at 441 4th Street, Marion Junior Building, as we affectionately call it. So if I see no further business before the state board, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. So it has been moved by Representative Henderson. Do I have a second?
Second.
It has been seconded by Representative from Ward 6, Best. All right, so yay. Any nays, any abstentions? We are now adjourned. Thank you.
Yays. Yay.
That's how you know you're old.
But bending down,
801?
if standing up.
Oh, gavel.
There you go.
There you go.
Now it's official.
Let's see. Stop. Please stop.
Look at that, 801, y'all got it.
Still online.
Yeah.